have a dinner.
Let's have a dinner.
Let's have it on me.
Have it on you.
You bring the ducks.
We'll bring the ducks.
I'm broke, you see.
You're broke, we see.
Let's have a party.
Let's have a party.
From the news center outside the city of Chicago in the great Midwest, it's the Stranger Than Fiction News right here on the Fringe FM. I'm Vance Nesbitt. Here's our headlines. Doctors in Missouri find a venomous brown recluse spider in a woman's ear. Doctors reportedly pulled a dime-sized brown recluse spider out of a woman's ear last week after she complained of pain. Susie Torres, who hates spiders, told Fox 4 in Kansas City that she woke up last Tuesday morning hearing a swishing sound in her ear. Quote, "It was like when you went swimming and you have all that water in your ear," she said. She initially thought she was having a reaction to an allergy shot, but when she went to the doctor, a medical assistant found the eight-legged creature. Doctors were able to remove the spider, which did not bite her. Bites from a brown recluse spider can cause discoloration of the affected area and flu-like symptoms. Torres is quoted as saying, "I went and put some cotton balls in my ears last night. I'm shaking off my clothes and I don't put my purse on the floor. I am a little bit more cautious these days." Source, Fox News. And a 7-foot crocodile was swimming in an Ohio creek as elementary school kids played in the water. It does sound like a scene from a monster movie. Children from a church group were playing in a creek in West Alexandria, Ohio, last Wednesday evening when one of their leaders spotted a 7-foot-long crocodile swimming nearby. There were 16 kids, all 1st through 6th graders, playing in the Bantus Fork Creek, and adults were in the water and on a small bridge to keep an eye on them, according to Rick Turnbull, who helps teach the children. Another adult saw something in the water, a shadowy object moving, and he yelled down to a person that was on the side of the bridge and shouted, "Get the kids out of the water," Turnbull said. Rich Denius was in the water with one of his sons and helped get the children to safety. The crocodile was about 20 feet away by the time everyone got out of the creek, Turnbull said. It swam right underneath the bridge that they were standing on. "He wasn't afraid of us. He swam under it and popped his head up and looked at us," he said. A wildlife officer was called in and shot the animal. Turnbull said the kids had been taken out of the area before this happened. Of course, crocodiles are not native to Ohio, and the state's veterinarian said it was probably a pet that someone dumped when it got too big. The crocodile was 7.5 feet long and weighed 171 pounds. Source, CNN. So let's get away from scary creatures and get right into Stranger Than Fiction Fringe Fun Fact. On average, people fear spiders more than they do death. That does not get us away from scary monsters. How about this? If Barbie were life-size, her measurements would be 39, 23, 33, and she would stand 7 feet 2 inches tall. Now that's a monster. This has been the Stranger Than Fiction News on the Fringe FM. Again, I'm Vance Nesbitt, news anchor and sorcerer.
Message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS T-Drift.
Contact, nice to be in orbit. The first message that comes to you is, you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
Broadcasting from a shack on a hill in the mossy creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. I'm Joe Roop, and this is Lighting the Void. It is Monday, September the 7th, and tonight we will be discussing the electric universe with Wal Thornhill. This is a big topic. I haven't talked about this in a very, very long time. Are we living in an electric universe? That's the big question, right? Is that what really going on? Is it that simple? Is it really that simple? Well, tonight we're going to get an in-depth look at that theory. How does the universe work? How is it created? We're all kind of familiar with modern cosmology, right? We understand it, but it seems the more we learn, the less we understand. And we're told that dark matter and dark energy make up the majority of the universe, but does the electric universe really explain things better? That's coming up and more in just a moment with Wal Thornhill. Also, we have the Transcendence event at Arizona in Sedona, Arizona with our very own Suzanne Ross. If you go to sci-spy.tv/events, you are going to be able to sign up for that. And if you put in the code word LTV, you're going to get 25 off the event. The show is also brought to you by GetTheTea.com. Make sure you stay cleansed and stay protected. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? From those intruders sprinkled down upon you. AncientLifeOil.com and PrepareWithTheFriends.com. Get your CBD oil there as well, and get prepared. So the call-in numbers for tonight, if we do open the phone lines up, which I want to kind of talk about this and get a good understanding of it first before we do anything like that. But you're more than welcome to drop in any questions that you have into the Fringe FM chat, and that is at thefringe.fm. If you hit that chat button up there, it'll take you to our Discord server where lots and lots of cool people like to hang out and have fun. And you can drop any questions there. I'll keep an eye on them, and I'll get them over to Wal, and we'll discuss it. So I want to give a big shout out to the recent supporters who have helped us get through to the next. And that was one of the closer, this was one of our closer times, and you know who you are. There's a special few of you that came through, and all of you that continue to support. You're just as meaningful to us, and however you support, sharing, liking, leaving a review. It's all the same stuff. It's all support. Now, next Friday, we're going to have Tim Doyle from UFO Seekers. He's going to come on just like I promised, and hopefully, and that as well is backed and supported by the Fringe FM and Lighting the Void. So if you want to keep a journalistic approach to that and see what's going on there, go to @UFO Seekers on Twitter. If you want to check out their best work, go to youtube.com/UFO Seekers. And if you've had a sighting, give them a ring at 661-UFO-7889. Now, our guest tonight is Wal Thornhill, and before entering the university, Wal had been inspired by the wide-ranging forensic style of Immanuel Velikovsky's iconoclastic best-selling book, Worlds in Collision. Now, the irrational response of American astronomers resulting in a modern-day book burning taught him to be skeptical and of expert opinions, and I totally agree. You should never burn books, no matter what they are. But Wal has achieved a broad synthesis of ideas he calls the electric universe in collaboration with David Talbott, and he was first presented at a world conference in Portland, Oregon in January of 1997. A booklet and a CD with that title were produced, and workshops and conferences were subsequently held in Portland, Oregon and Seattle, Washington. Wal became the main contributor to a free internet newsletter, which is spelled THOTH, THOTH, and was invited several times a year to speak in the U.S. He has presented at conferences in the U.S., Australia, Europe, and Middle East, and he has published 2 books with David Talbott, author of the Saturn Myth, the first titled Thunderbolts of the Gods, and the second, The Electric Universe, and on the combined subjects of the recent history of the solar system and the electrical nature of the universe. A few websites for reference are thunderbolts.info, also holoscience.com, HOLO science.com, and you can check out the Thunderbolts project on YouTube as well. Walt, thank you so much for coming on Lighting the Void. This is kind of a big deal. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for the invitation. And as it turns out, your timing is almost perfect.
Why is that?
Because we have had for several years now a project, an experiment, which has cost a few $1 million, and it was run privately, so we weren't being interfered with by experts. And we have produced all of the effects of the sun in the laboratory.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
Yes.
So just real quick, right, for the folks that don't, I'm sure most of us do, but the folks that don't understand the electric universe in simple form, in simple form, does it simply mean that the universe runs on, and this is my understanding, on electric currents or electromagnetic currents made up of mainly plasma? Is that right?
Yes, it's the mainstream, of course, recognize that the visible universe is 99.99% plasma. And I should explain that plasma is a form of matter where the atoms lose some of their outer electrons, so you have separated charge, both positive and negative. And in space, that's a very, very diffuse gas, it's a very complete vacuum. Now, once you have separated charge, the main influence on those particles is electromagnetic. And so the universe is governed electromagnetically and also by gravity. But gravity takes over when the electromagnetism is not so active. And we can talk about that a bit later. But the electric universe is so named not just because the electric force is the driver in the universe. It drives everything. It drives biology, it drives atomic structure and motion, and it also forms stars and planets. And gravity only takes over when the electromagnetism effects die down. But the electric universe was so named because all you need to explain everything is the electric force. And unfortunately, at present, we reward scientists for inventing new forces and new particles, with the result that we have a complete zoo of particles. And also, there's this push always to invent new forces, like dark energy, which is forcing the universe to expand faster. All of these are mythical beasts because you just don't need them, and it's a complication. Science in the 19th century was all about simplification. And I should say that towards the end of the 19th century, we were extremely close to the electric universe model. But then we lost the plot, and we lost it completely. And we stopped doing physics and began doing mathematics. And there's no necessary connection between the two, unless you know absolutely, as a mathematician, what it is you're talking about. When all those symbols on your blackboard have an explanation physically. Right now they don't. So the mathematicians have been gratuitously blowing our minds with all these crazy ideas which have no relationship to anything real. Anyway, in a nutshell, the electric universe is about everything. The electric nature of atoms, pardon me, biological systems, planetary movement, because gravity is also an electric force, a particular kind of electric force. Magnetism is a particular kind of electric force. Everything revolves around the electric force and electric currents in space.
Gotcha. Okay. And so this would make sense to me because, I don't want to take this to a spiritual conversation, but to me, like, I'm a hermeticist, the kind of as above, so below. So I understand it that way. The magnetic forces of the body and all of this stuff, it would make sense that would be in the universe as well. I think that a lot of times we wonder why things got complicated between the two. Was it black holes? Is that when things started getting off kilter? What was the one thing that made people just start getting more complicated, you think?
was a good question, and it really started with Einstein, because Einstein removed all of the standards of physics. He more or less treated things in isolation, and by doing so, he actually removed the rest of the universe from his theories. It was the only way he could make his inertial observers equivalent, because if you bring in the rest of the matter in the universe, they're not. If one's moving quickly, then its inertial frame of reference is different to somebody who's moving slowly with reference to the fixed stars. So mass, length, and time became robbery. And this is why you hear people talking about time slowing down and trying to represent mass in terms of the speed of light, which is about the only constant left. Einstein made it a constant, even though it's experimentally it's not. So we stopped doing physics, and physics was mostly in the 19th century done by great experimental physicists. Nowadays we have theoretical mathematicians doing the work, which means that if you ask what gravity is, they immediately turn to the blackboard and start drawing diagrams, geometric diagrams, to try and explain it, when all they're doing is describing it. The electric universe delved deeper and tried to explain it, and in the process discovered that gravity is not what we think it is, and that it's even more interesting than anyone ever expected. So you really got to go right back to the science of the 19th century and pick up from there, because those people knew what they were doing. After the First World War, when mathematicians were involved in trying to build bigger and better ways of destroying things, the edict was to shut up and calculate. Right. Nowadays, with computers and supercomputers, it's shut up and compute. And so we have these computer models which are being used to try and prove things. You can't do that, because all the computer model can do is throw back to you what you put in it. So it reflects the ideas you put in, and if those ideas are incorrect, then the results that it spews out, and those artists' renditions are really virtual reality pictures. Much like the Avatar movie, you can create a virtual reality using a supercomputer, and this is what is happening now.
Wow, gotcha. Okay, so this does kind of simplifies things, right? And I know you did a speech back in 2016 that I listened to that I thought was fascinating, called "The Elegant Simplicity of the Electric Universe."
Yes.
But I think for people that are science-minded, some of the biggest problems that they run into with the electric universe theory is, where did all this energy come from? In modern cosmology, they say, well, it's the Big Bang. And say, well, now they have an explanation. Well, that's not an explanation, though, to me, right?
No, it's not. In fact, it's interesting because, of course, the Renaissance, the birth of modern science, was supposed to be a rational escape from religious beliefs. But instead of that, modern science has picked up one which it felt that it must have, and that is a creation story. And, of course, mankind from the earlier civilizations, and even some of the more primitive cultures around the world, have all got their creation myth. And so science has got its creation myth as well. And it's got nothing to do with physics, because it starts off with a miracle. The Big Bang was actually, in the beginning, there was nothing which exploded, as Terry Pratchett put it. That's not scientific. And also, they talk about all of this energy at the beginning, which is forcing the universe to expand. But there's no definition in physics right now of energy, or mass for that matter. I mean, it's quite incredible. Textbooks write about defining mass as being the amount of matter that's in a body, and yet the equation which everyone has heard of but nobody understands, E equals mc squared, is telling us that mass is an energetic variable. In other words, the energy and mass both appear in the same equation. And so you can interchange them. So this idea that you created the universe and all the matter in it from the Big Bang is nonsense, because the matter had to be there in the first place to contain the energy.
Right.
So you've got this circular argument which goes nowhere. And then the idea that the universe had to expand crazily at the beginning in order that it all didn't just fall back and be a black hole, and that's another problem. Why wasn't it just a black hole? Then you realize that you've got an unbalanced universe. As one philosopher said, only an idiot would invent a universe which is unbalanced, because everything either falls back in or it continues to expand until everything's gone, which is a pretty hopeless kind of future to look at. And this is one of the aspects of the electric universe cosmology. It paints an entirely different picture of our place in the universe and also the recent history of the solar system. Because according to astronomers, there is no recent history. It's all millions of years or billions of years ago that bad things happened. And nowadays they're not allowed because the experts say so. Well, all of the ancient creation stories were actually about the formation of the present solar system.
Right.
They witnessed things in this solar system that Velikovsky managed to, using a forensic technique, look at the evidence and come up with some certainties and some things which are possible and others which are probable. And the certainty that you can take away from his work was that Venus was, within the memory of mankind, just before the early civilizations, a gigantic comet, a planetary-sized comet in the solar system. And that's what his Worlds in Collision book was chiefly about. He ran into problems, of course, because this was against the beliefs of the astronomers who wanted a peaceful universe so that they could make up stories about how mountains are formed and planets are formed and all this sort of thing. But it is a made-up story. In fact, it's interesting, living in Australia as I do, our first peoples here, the indigenous Aboriginal people, have some of the most accurate stories of what they saw in the sky down to this day, because they remembered things in terms of ritual and dance, which is a more accurate way of doing it than using words, because words are often they're misinterpreted. And the misinterpretation of the creation myths around the world is obvious once you begin to see how you can piece together those things that make actually good forensic evidence and those things which don't. And this was the genius of Velikovsky and also my colleague David Talbott. David Talbott took Velikovsky's reconstruction even further back in time, and the story of the human race and our dear planet Earth would blow all science fiction stories out of the water, because the story is just amazing.
Wow. Yeah. And so do you find that that you run into scientists who are willing to sit and talk with you about this but won't go on the record quite a bit? I wonder.
Yeah. Yes.
I bet that's frustrating.
In fact, early in the piece, those scientists who tried to support Velikovsky lost their jobs quite often. Academia is a pretty brutal place to be if you don't conform to the club. And so I realized early on that it wasn't any good me pursuing an academic course, that I had to do my research independently, which that's my habit anyway, even when I was in high school and primary school. And having been shown by Velikovsky how to do this kind of forensic examination of material which other people were ignoring, and modern astronomy ignores ancient astronomy. I think it's of no relevance. It has one heck of a lot to teach us. In fact, out of that research came the idea that stars are powered electrically. They're an electrical phenomenon. They're not a thermonuclear bomb being suppressed by gravity. And our experiment that was actually just went public this morning is on our thunderbolts.info homepage if people want to have a look at it.
Sure.
Has shown that we can reproduce a star in the laboratory, and the results have just been phenomenal.
Well, I'm going to drop that in the Fringe FM chat. I'm just going to go to the homepage and copy that link and drop it into the. This is a fantastic website too, by the way, for anybody that wants to get around the or understand from beginner to even more advanced stuff on this. It's thunderbolts.info, and also you guys have a pretty nice and well-developed YouTube channel as well. There are lots of, that's the thing about this, and the reason why I wanted to talk to you about it. There are so many people that are behind this, friends and colleagues and listeners that tell me about this all of the time. And I understand, you know, science is important. I think it's important, but I think you're right. I think we got away from what it was really about. And I feel, again, I'll reiterate this, I feel more of a spiritual and cosmological, I guess, truth to this than anything. Do you find that, and I know that doesn't really help your case with science, but do you find that helps your cause?
Yes. People who come to our annual conferences, and the last two have been in England, say that they've not been to conferences like it because the subject matter scans the complete spectrum, everything from atomic physics to biology to earth sciences, climate, earthquakes, the planetary system and its history, to stars, to how galaxies are formed and how the whole thing is connected. And all of the key players work together. There is no adversarial, aspect to it at all. It's like almost a family reunion every year when we get together. Everyone supports everyone else because they can see the enormity of the task.
Yeah. So you got to be kind of steadfast about it. Listen, before we take a break, I've got to ask you this, though. The one thing that people talk about with this back and forth is the black holes, right? And that's why I brought it up earlier.
Yes.
The idea that black holes, I guess, and you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, that the electric universe theory doesn't say that black holes do they say that black holes do or don't exist?
They don't.
They don't exist. Okay. So
no.
Recently they showed us this picture, and I'm sure you're aware of it, of I guess it was the vibrations or whatever that is around the black hole. We didn't really get the image of the black hole, but just what was around it. I guess the matter or whatever they called it. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's quite simple. We accept all valid research about the universe, which is backed up by experiment. And the only people doing real experiments on the structure of the universe are plasma scientists. And there is the IEEE, which is the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, is the biggest professional organization in the world. And they support what's called plasma cosmology. Now, the plasma cosmology has been tested in the lab, and it's also got all the mathematical theory you could want. And they've shown that galaxies are an electromagnetic phenomenon where current flows in along the spiral arms into the center of the galaxy. And in the laboratory, they've got a device that does something very much like that called a dense plasma focus. And in the dense plasma focus, all of the power stored in rooms full of capacitors is concentrated into a discharge in the size of a baked bean tin, and it forms a plasmoid. And the plasmoid contains all of that energy from those rooms full of high-energy capacitors stored in a thing which may be only a few millimeters across, a little donut. Now, we know from E equals mc squared, if you have a hell of a lot of energy stored in a small volume, that the mass, the apparent mass of that object must be enormous as well. But it's entirely an electromagnetic phenomenon. And what's more, these plasmoids, when they become unstable and decay, they spew jets out along the axis of the donut, the plasmoid. And this is exactly what we see.
Okay.
Everything about the plasma cosmology is borne out by observation. But unfortunately, because scientists don't understand gravity, they've just taken their equations to an absurd level where they let matter just keep falling in until it reaches an almost infinite concentration. And then they say, now we've got enough force there to produce these amazing effects. But it's completely the wrong model.
Gotcha.
Simple as that.
Yeah, it seems like that's what I'm starting to find out is all of these questions seem to be explained very, very easily. And wouldn't that be nice, right? I mean, think about it. Wouldn't that be nice if this makes so much more sense to me. More on this when we come back with Walt Thornhill, The Electric Universe. I'm Joe Roop. This is Lighting the Void. Stay with us.
Listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
And now we can get the information.
I love magic, and on Lighting the Void, each and every week, you will get to hear shows about magic, mysticism, and many other subjects that stretch your mind and imagination. So when I got my mind on the magic and the magic on my mind, I listened to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM. It's magic.
May the gods look with favor upon you.
You're wondering what we're going to do to you, aren't you?
This is Crow 777, and you are listening to The Fringe FM.
AncientLifeOil.com. For your CBD needs, just remember, AncientLifeOil.com. What does it do for the body, you ask? I can't say to the people in the suits that run the industry. Big Pharma's all over CBD because of its well, you know what I mean. Research the benefits of CBD on Google and come back to AncientLifeOil.com and purchase your CBD today. Non-GMO and all organic. You don't want to be using a petroleum product. You want to be using the cleanest CBD product on the market. AncientLifeOil.com. We even have CBD for your pet. Help your pet's discomfort. Help your discomfort. Log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Newly reduced prices to pass off the savings to the most important person. You. AncientLifeOil.com. And one more thing, we have topicals too. So if you have joint pain and some different issues that are going on in your body, you might want to use a topical. Think about it. AncientLifeOil.com.
I'm Ryan Gable, and I want to remind you to keep your radio, phone, tablet, or computer tuned to the Fringe FM. And visit the website, thefringe.fm, to listen to the entire lineup of shows. You can also catch my broadcast, The Secret Teachings, Monday through Friday, beginning at 12 a.m. midnight U.S. Pacific Time, right here on The Fringe FM.
All right, everyone, this is Justin from the UK. Excuse the chitty. If you're into the Fringe and you want to hear the brass tacks, my old china plate, Joe Roop, and his guests on Lighting the Void will open your mince pies. You need to shut your north and south and use your 10-speed gears and listen to them bubble. You could hear a Barry Crocker, no Brussels, but he ain't no holy friar. Anyway, you beat a Barnaby Rudge and take a butcher's.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Come, walk through the mossy creek and up the hill. Never mind the flashing lights and otherworldly shadows. They stay hidden within the trees. Come, step up to the shack and begin your journey to the answers that you seek. This is Lady Anne, and you are listening to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM.
listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop. We're live on the Fringe FM. Don't forget the show is here for you Monday through Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific to midnight. Tomorrow night, Jeffrey Mishlove is going to be on the program big time. I'm a huge fan of Jeffrey Mishlove, so it's a real honor. I mean, this week is one of those weeks that's going to be spectacular because we're starting it out with Walt Thornhill. We're discussing the electric universe with Mr. Thornhill. And, Walt, do you find that the audience or the people that have this inner knowing that I was talking about before the break, that doesn't really stack up to science, right? Inner knowing stuff or explanations. But do you find that more and more people are coming to this theory or starting to believe that this is what's really going on? Is it growing?
Yes, it is. We've got, last I looked, 157,000 subscribers on our Thunderbolts website. Or our YouTube channel, I should say. And we've got hundreds of hours of videos that are being watched, and we sit, I think, 3 or 4 million views of some of these videos, which are feature length. So I would say, as my colleague Dave Talbott said some time ago, we are a movement. And I think with the Sapphire experiment and its success, we cannot be ignored.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I'm here talking to you about it, because it's just everybody, to me, that really gets into this stuff. You know, spirit science. It's kind of like they're trying to merge the two, and I find myself here all the time. But when I look on your website at thunderbolts.info, what I find is that, you know, it's jam-packed full of information and full of everything has everything. It's amazing to me because I'm like, okay, well, what about this? Or what about, everything has a simple explanation. And I don't know why more scientists aren't going down this road. And do you believe that it's just, are they afraid of just ruining their careers or something, and they just don't do it for academic purposes?
No, I think that they genuinely believe that we're not worth listening to. And the reason for that is that our education systems fail us today because instead of having a broad general education, which was typical of the 19th century, now the emphasis is on specialization. And we've got to the point now where the specialization is so intense that even within a single discipline, practitioners can't talk to one another without going through a whole lot of explanation. And I know that firsthand because I attend meetings of astrophysicists and geologists and other scientists. I live only 20 minutes drive from our research school of astrophysics and so on. And when they've got something interesting on, I go and listen. And the problem is that there is no big picture to fit all of these disciplines neatly together. And there's no university on earth that teaches a big picture which deals with all subjects and shows their relationship, their real relationship. So the specialization has killed invention to a large extent because just by walking down the corridor and striking up a conversation with somebody who's in a different discipline, they might find that they have an answer to a problem that's been bugging them for years. Now, my education began really with Velikovsky, and luckily I was in early high school when I read it, because then from that moment on I was questioning the things I was being taught and trying to place them into this bigger picture that Velikovsky had painted, which was a quite dramatic picture, really. And the thing that surprised me was how hard it was to get people interested, because I could see that this was fundamental. It meant that everything changes if Velikovsky was right. And it's only now that slowly, one by one, people, scientists, engineers, and people like that who are coming around to seeing that, yes, what we're saying makes sense. And not only that, it paints a picture which people can see that they can participate. And we encourage backyard tinkerers and experimenters and others with ideas to come forward. And if they make a good show of it, and we have what we call a breakout room at our conferences in America, people have shown their experiments and their ideas, and if they look as though they fit with the electric universe model, we will encourage them to present them at our main conferences. And this has happened several times over the years and brought people in, and it's changed their lives. It does change people's lives. It gives them a purpose that was not there before.
Fantastic. Yeah. It does feel that way to me too, that it does kind of explain everything. Because I'm that kind of guy. I feel like you're that way too. Belief is one thing.
Everyone wants to know, what's it all about?
Right. I mean, belief is one thing, but I want to know. Mm-hmm. And if we don't know, let's not try to explain something that's impossible, which was what I love about this, because you don't say, well, it was a big bang or God spoke and bang. You just say, well, we don't know. Let's leave it at that, because it's unexplainable.
That's right. We really need to do a lot of research before we can even ask the right questions.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, that's so true. Asking the right questions is indeed everything. That's what the show is all about. And I wanted to kind of look into plasma with you, if you don't mind, a little bit more, because we understand only like solids, liquids, and gases, and that's what we're kind of used to. But when I look out into space, dark energy kind of makes sense to me, because of course it looks like everything's separate. But where is the plasma? Where is it located? Is it so thin? Is it so small that we just don't see it? Is that how it's working?
Yes, most of the plasma in the universe is invisible because it's only a few atoms or particles per cubic meter. But in the incredible volume of space, that still amounts to an awful lot of matter. All you need is one charged particle in 10,000 neutral atoms to make that, what you might call that thin gas, behave electromagnetically rather than gravitationally. So that gives you an idea of the power of the electric force compared to gravity. And in deep space, we find some regions where dust and this thin gas is gathered, and they form what they call molecular clouds, because the dust is actually, clouds of little molecules collected together. And that's where we find stars forming. And hey presto, how do they form? Well, in those clouds, they form along things that look like cloud-to-cloud lightning. They form along these thin filaments. Now, gravity doesn't collect things in filaments. It collects them in balls. And this is not what we see. And what we do see is along these filaments, which glow weakly in infrared, so they can be picked up by our modern infrared telescopes. When they were first seen with infrared telescopes, they exclaimed, "Wow, they're like pearls on a string." And of course, that's exactly how they look, and that's exactly how they're born. But this was more or less predicted by the plasma cosmologists long before it was discovered. But none of this is reported in the science news because these people ignore the engineers, the electrical engineers who do plasma science. And this business of compartmentalization of knowledge and defending your territory is absolutely insane when you're doing science. You cannot do that. You have to be inclusive, because cosmology is meant to be the umbrella science under which everything else fits. In other words, it's our picture of where we exist in this universe, and give you some idea of why we're here. At present, our modern cosmology is merely a mathematical game and has no meaning at all for us, either as living creatures or as having any future, because it'll all fizzle out in the end. This is a pretty dismal picture. The electric universe cosmology, on the other hand, paints us as being an integral part of the universe, which is connected, and connected in a way which is not understood by modern physics, but is easily to demonstrate. And it paints it gives you an idea that being a part of this universe means that the universe itself is conscious, and we're actually a part of a conscious universe. Now, this gives much more meaning to life.
Absolutely.
And And it's beyond, it has its own spiritual aspect, because then it opens up all sorts of possibilities which at present are discounted and actually are taboo in biology and the medical field, where anything that's not chemistry is more or less is not scientific, and it's not evidence-based. Well, this idea of evidence is a bit of a nonsense when you realize that evidence can only be accepted by somebody if they're already prepared for the idea that such a thing is possible. And our education system does not prepare people, specialists, for things that they believe to be impossible. So this is why they reject the electric universe, of course, because, it's impossible.
Yeah, well, Rupert Sheldrake showed us that. He showed us
exactly.
That we believe things.
He's a good friend of mine. And I think provide the science which can help underpin his research.
That's so cool. Fantastic. Yeah, because it is kind of funny how we totally believe that something is impossible, but all it takes is one human to break a record, or one person to show you that it's possible. Then the rest of the world catches up.
Yes. It's a very funny place to be, actually, to realize that way back in 1994, when I teamed up with David Talbott and I said we must work together, that we would achieve our aim of a paradigm shift, because this is a paradigm shift which probably is unequaled in history, because it's not only a scientific paradigm shift, it's also a cultural one. You begin to realize that the human race is actually suffering a kind of post-traumatic stress disorder following celestial interference in the past, which we thought was doomsday, and has given rise to this doomsday phenomenon where we've always got to have some fear of existential fear that we're going to be wiped out by something. And of course, the climate change alarmism right now is precisely that, because climate scientists do not understand the electrical input into our weather systems, which we've actually shown now with our research is a big part of driving our weather.
Wow. So you're messing with the weather, man, too. That's fantastic.
Oh, yes. Everyone gets a serve.
A lot of times, you watch the weather and it looks like they're up there spinning a wheel half the time, They don't know what's going on. Can you explain to me a little bit more about gradualism versus catastrophism?
Well, gradualism was really a cultural aspect of science in Britain at the time of Lyell and Darwin, geology and biology. And it was the idea that the changes that we saw in the geological record were all caused by random mutations over a long span of time. Mm-hmm. But nature isn't that stupid. Nature has to adjust to the environment that it finds itself in. And only now, geneticists finding that there is such a thing as epigenetics, where the experiences of one generation can influence the development of the next generation in such a way as to try and improve their survival chances. Now, my view from the electric universe point of view is that the consciousness of the universe includes the information required to establish life wherever it may exist in the universe. And so it didn't all start from nothing on the Earth. As soon as the environment was available, which had been experienced somewhere else in the galaxy as amenable to life, that information is available on Earth to the atoms and molecules and so on as they develop. So there is almost a kind of a spiritual aspect to this as well, in that the universe itself is involved in our lives at a level that we don't understand at present. Certainly the physicists don't. And of course the physicists then pass on their misinformation to others, which results in everyone going off the track, which is what's happened over the last century. The implications of all of this it's almost hard to estimate and to imagine See, what we've done in the Electric Universe group is to set the framework for the science of the future. And this means an awful lot of work and also inspiration, I think, for the coming generation and generations to look at all of the mountains of data that have been accumulated over the last century and misinterpreted. It has to be reinterpreted. And we don't need to send up more space shots to various planets and things, because once you understand the electric universe, most of the questions that are being asked are either badly framed or are already answered if they knew what the science was behind it.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. See, because I would talk to John Anthony West about that a long time ago, and he said,
yes,
evolution I could buy, right? And he wasn't very he wasn't very sensitive about his beliefs. He would just tell you something was BS, right? He said, evolution yes. I could buy, but evolution via natural selection is just garbage, and he would say this is
right. Yeah.
This is garbage. And I mean, I'm using light terms here,
Unfortunately, yes, it lacked a mechanism. What is the mechanism? Because if it's just random, then the chances of life actually establishing itself in the first place is the odds against it are astronomical.
Right. Yes. Yes. Do you think that we need more people like that in this field? More people that are just willing to just hit people in the face with stuff like, common sense type things? I mean, I feel like that's what we need.
Yes, that's right. Well, my view has been that if I got up and led the charge, so to speak, that when you do that, a good leader will, other leaders will spring up, and this is what's happened. So that you look at our Thunderbolts website, and there's names popping up, new ones all the time, because they've got the message, and then they've looked at their own work and they've said, hey, look, I can see how this would explain all of these problems in this area. And so they will do space news, as we call them, or YouTube video, or appear at our conferences. It's very much a case of we've always shared what we understood at any given time. We're always prepared to give up an idea if we get somebody point out a flaw or give you a better idea. So it's a work in progress and always has been. And the fact that it is also invites people to have a go, which is all we're asking.
Now, I've seen some people get into, especially had some conversations with some friends in Canada where they were discussing the Aurora Borealis. And according to the electric universe theory, this is a clear demonstration, right, of the connection between our planet and the sun, and it kind of explains it,
yes.
right?
Yes, and the fact that the definitive work on that was done by Christian Birkeland back in the early 1900s. I think his Polar Expedition books were published in 1902, and he made a whole lot of discoveries and also built himself a small, almost a version of our SAPPHIRE experiment, if you like, which was a little Earth in a vacuum chamber, which he applied electric charge to, and then demonstrated auroras. He demonstrated how sunspots might move in latitude on the sun. He demonstrated the ring of Saturn, all of these things electrically. So that guy was one of the big pioneers of the electric universe. And this is one of the things I've always enjoyed, is having come up with these ideas, I look back in history to see if anyone has had precedents, done this before. And I keep finding these amazing scientists in the past who've actually made these breakthroughs and then were ignored or forgotten. And unfortunately, the way we're taught in schools, you would never think that there were these breakthroughs or that there was any controversy over Einstein and all this kind of thing. It's just taught as a fact when these facts are not real facts.
No, they just end up changing, just like the laws of physics seem to all the time, right?
Yeah, you get a Reader's Digest version of history, which is aimed to give you a kind of Darwinian picture of the progress of science from some sort of ignorant caveman up to the present pinnacle where we've just about got a theory of everything. Nothing could be further than the truth. because the so-called cavemen, we don't understand what they were going through at the time to make them live in caves. And they had knowledge that we have forgotten, it seems, because when the early civilizations sprang up, like thunderclaps, as one of the scholars said, there's no explanation for that. How were they able to build the things they did, having just escaped from the caves? I mean, this makes no sense at all in the standard story, but it makes a lot of sense from our point of view, because those cavemen were actually doing their best to survive under conditions we can hardly imagine.
Yeah, right. I see. What I'm trying to say to folks, I think, is we talk about the mysteries here quite a bit, and we also talk about science quite a bit.
Yep.
This theory, the electric universe, and I know what people are thinking. Well, it explains, you're validating all of your spiritual beliefs with the electric universe. No, I'm just saying that there are an awful lot of coincidences with this, especially when it comes to the mystery schools of like Pythagoras, and when you look into things like Tesla, and it's like could be the hidden gem. And if it's really this simple, we've been going backwards for a long time. And that, to me, if that's true, that's probably the most frustrating thought in my mind right now.
Yes, it is. We've wasted a century. Physics has been like a slow motion train wreck ever since Einstein and Niels Bohr derailed it.
Can you talk to me about Mars? It's another discussion that we have quite a bit here. We talk about the face on Mars. Was it a planet like ours at one time? What really happened there? Because there seems to be some form of life. There's resonances of life that used to be there. We keep finding this stuff. Like even Richard Hoagland back in the day would get made fun of about things that he said about bodies of water. And now, 10 years later, they're finding little stuff like that. I almost said you guys, but the electric universe theory is, you talk about the lightning scarred planet. What's that about?
Yes. Well, we have pieced together the recent history of the solar system and the Earth, and it makes a story which should be in IMAX theaters, because a lot of the imagery that's been passed down to us and appears in our architecture and religious symbols and flags that we fly for reasons we don't know is that they were reproductions of things actually witnessed in the sky. And when you analyze those things and the stories surrounding them, you find that the North American Indians knew that Mars had a great giant scar on its face. In fact, he was called Scarface, and he was the red god. And around the world, there is a red god in most of the creation stories. And red is a color associated with the gods. Also, you've got to ask the question, why all of these cultures around the world, which were everything from the Pacific Islanders and the Australian Aborigines to the civilizations of the Middle East and so on, all have the same characteristics for the same planets. Mars was the god of war. He was the red god. Venus was always female, had long flowing hair, or had snakes for hair, or was associated with the dragon. And this fire-breathing dragon is a mythical beast. There's no way a living creature could breathe fire. And yet this dragon picture is global. And this is where you get to the forensic side of it. If people, a whole lot of unreliable witnesses, all notice the same thing about a suspect, then you can take it to the bank that's good, solid evidence.
Right.
And this was the approach that Velikovsky took. Not only that, he had the benefit of a broad education, so he could apply what was known in science at the beginning of the 20th century to these observations and say, well, if that were to happen, what would we expect to see as well? What would be the knock-on effects? And one of the ones he picked on was the day of Joshua when the sun stood still. Now, he said, if the sun's motion in the sky is disturbed and the sun didn't set for an extended period, if we go to the other side of the world, to South America, we should find stories of an extended night or some such thing, and also other effects, geological effects, because the Earth's motion was obviously disturbed. And blow me down, he found them where it was described as they had an extended night, stars fell from the sky and all the forests burned. Well, this is the kind of physical science that you can bring to the question and say, well, this sort of adds weight to this particular interpretation that the Earth's motion was disturbed. And then the question is, well, what caused it? And then you look at the rest of the story and you see it's associated with some object or some planetary god, because all of the ancient gods were associated with the planets. Uh-huh. And then you've got to ask the question, well, why the heck did these planets that we can hardly pick out in the sky today treated with such awe, and why were they all given the same characteristics, regardless of where you were on the Earth, which points to the fact that what they were talking about were the planets in the sky. And as the Earth rotated underneath, they all saw the same features. Wow. So that's the way you'd go about it. And so I was confronted with the research of David Talbott and a Canadian, Eduardo Cardona. He's written huge books, thousands of pages in his research, which is copiously footnoted so people can check it. And my task, I saw it, was to try and explain these things in terms of physics. And it was in doing that I realized that modern physics really doesn't understand gravity, and that Einstein's work was really an imaginative diversion into a form of geometry which has nothing to do with the real world, that is differential geometry, where you can warp things out of shape and project them back into 3 dimensions and make out that it's something real. Yeah. The story of Mars and the Earth is very closely linked because we were not part of this present solar system, if you like. We're the aliens here.
Fantastic.
And this is a bit of a mind-bending concept, but all of the evidence points to it. And the association between objects that were in close orbits prior to these events is to be held in their axial tilts, because a spinning planet acts like a gyro and it doesn't like to be disturbed, so its spin will always tend to point to the same place in the sky. That's why they use them for navigation. And a spinning planet is one heck of a gyro. It's very hard to disturb it. So even though the system that we were a part of was torn apart, we can still identify 3 of the key players. And that is Saturn, the gas giant Saturn, Mars, and the Earth. Now, the ancient stories can be tracked to explain what they saw in the sky, and the things they saw in the sky defy our present understanding of gravity, and that was my biggest challenge. It took me decades to finally figure that one out. And I spoke about it, I think it was in 2015 at our conference, where I titled it The Long Path to Understanding Gravity. And there were more constraints too. I was also constrained by what plasma cosmologists had pieced together experimentally, and also an astronomer called Halton Arp, who was known to his friends as the modern-day Galileo, because he discovered the observational evidence which proves the Big Bang never happened, that the universe is not expanding, that everything seems to be held in place, and he couldn't understand that. And he said this means that gravity must be a repulsive force on the larger scale. Mm. And when you look back in history, you find that even Newton thought about that as a possibility, and another guy, a Frenchman, Lesage, also came up with a theory which actually used that model and explained it. But his difficulty was that it involved particles whizzing around and crashing into things. And when you do that, you calculate, well, you can't do that because the Earth would vaporize with all these particles hitting us. And anyway, to get back to the story, we call it the Proto-Saturnian story because before we entered this solar system, we entered the sun's electrical influence, we were a part of a brown dwarf system. Okay. And Proto-Saturn in its former state when it was outside the sun's influence, was a red dwarf, if you like. Now, I mean, you could talk all day about this, but the SAPPHIRE experiment shows that stars are an electrical phenomenon, an electric discharge phenomenon, first and foremost, and that all red stars are an electric star which is not getting enough power. So what it does is plasma always adjusts to suit the environment. So it puts out a bigger shell around it, which gathers particles from space, electrons, and other particles. And when it does that, it glows red. So red giants and red dwarfs, all giants, that's just your central star in each case is small. And their size is such, this glowing red shell, that any satellites of that brown dwarf can orbit inside it quite happily. And it turns out that the environment in there is the best place for life to get a foothold. Because you're inside the thin atmosphere of a star, and red dwarfs are known to have water in there and also biological molecules in their atmospheres. So that's sort of misting down the whole time. It explains where our water came from, by the way, because Saturn, its rings are all water ice, so that would have been part of the atmosphere of Proto-Saturn as a red dwarf. And getting back to the scarring of Mars, though, when this system was captured by the Sun, the capture is an electrical event. So you have what's called these Thunderbolts of the gods occurring between the planetary objects involved in the capture. And Mars and the Earth were fairly close in that system, and so they came close and discharged on a regular basis. And also Mars then went off and discharged towards other bodies within that small planetary system. The result was it got damaged terribly. And in our video, we point out that kilometres of material in the northern hemisphere was stripped off, and that great gash that extends a third of the way around the planet, called the Valles Marineris, is one of the major scars. Now, that comes down to the recognition by the North American Indians that Mars had a scar and called him Scarface. Mars was close enough in our sky to easily see the surface, which is not the case today and could not happen today. So that electrical scarring ripped the guts out of Mars. It stripped its atmosphere. It would have had an environment prior to that, very much like the Earth's, I think, so the chances of there having been life on Mars are quite good. As I said, that environment in the earlier Proto-Saturnian red dwarf phase would have been quite similar to that of the Earth, because all bodies inside that red glowing shell would have received the same radiant energy over every part of its surface, whether it be the poles or the equator, and they would have received water misting down. So gotcha. Mars is a member of the family, our original family.
You guys also have, we're going to go into our break here, but you also have, you guys got to check out the YouTube channel, all right? So I know we've talked about YouTube binging, but this one's worth it, right? The Thunderbolts channel, sure. It's worth binging on to understand this stuff. Remembering the end of the world is also a fascinating one, too. Look, if you got any questions, it's 1-800-588-0335. I know some of you want to ask your questions, and you might be intimidated by Mr. Thornhill, but I bet you he's got an answer for it. What you want to bet? We'll be right back.
Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
I'm Ryan Gable, and I want to remind you to keep your radio, phone, tablet, or computer tuned to The Fringe FM, and visit the website thefringe.fm to listen to the entire lineup of shows. You can also catch my broadcast, The Secret Teachings, Monday through Friday, beginning at 12 a.m. midnight U.S. Pacific Time, right here on The Fringe FM.
Folks, this is very important information. What's to be said about CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. Our CBD is made from hemp and has 0.003 THC, which means this wonderful product won't get you high, no matter what amount you take. What does CBD do for the body? My hands are tied, but you can Google CBD benefits and be astounded. When you're finished reading, you'll want to log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. and purchase. Life is good when you feel good. People are tired of pain. People are asking for non-GMO organic products to help them with you fill in the blank. Legal in 49 states, and again, our CBD is made from hemp. Ancient Life Oil is about helping people one by one by one. If you wonder how good the product is, the CEO takes it every day without miss. AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Have a great day.
The Fringe FM isn't just a radio station. We also provide services for all your audio production needs. If you are interested in live radio or pre-recorded podcasts, we're here to help. We even do audio enhancements and voiceovers if needed. If you want to do a podcast or live radio show and even want the option to syndicate on terrestrial radio, from simple audio file enhancement to live production and call screening, we have you covered. We have worked with some of the best professionals in the business in order to provide coaching instruction for content creation, show structure, and more. Contact The Fringe Digital Media for more at info@thefringe.fm. That's info@thefringe.fm. Or call 501-777-5631 for a consultation.
Hey, Google. I would like to become more intelligent about the unknown world around us. But I don't have time to read or go to school because I work all the time. What do you recommend?
Try listening to Lighting the Void. It's the best way to become more intelligent about the unknown world around us. Besides, I happen to think Joe Roop is the most handsome voice in radio. Listen Monday through Friday 9 p.m. till midnight Pacific Time on the Fringe FM. Plus, you will hear a bonus feature called The Stranger Than Fiction News, reported by Vance Nesbitt, news anchor and sorcerer. With all this information in one location, you are guaranteed to be more attractive to others in your social circle because you'll beam with intellectual wisdom.
Yeah, I think I'll try that.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
Alex Exum.
This is Alex Exum of the Exum Experience in Live Talk, where we discuss current events, society, and culture. My shows are based in actuality, actual existence, contrasted with what was intended, expected, or believed. You can listen to me live Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 7 p.m. only on KTLK, The Fringe FM.
This is Stephen Canyon, and you are listening to The Fringe. The Fringe FM.
You're listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. If you would like to text, you can text in at 501-777-5631.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop. Tonight we're with Walt Thornhill, and we're discussing the electric universe. For reference, you can go to thunderbolts.info. That's one of the sites that you can go to as well as Holo, HOLO Science.com, the Thunderbolts Project on YouTube, and I believe they've also have a Twitter too. What is it, at Thunderbolts on Twitter? I mean, we need to follow this, keep up with this, ask questions. If it makes sense to us, then that's okay. And I was discussing that with Walt during the break. We're taught, I believe, Walt, to not, no, because we look up to scientists and all these people, these big backgrounds in education, and we say, what they say must be right because they have the degrees, they've done their studies, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I learned from, as I mentioned before, from John Anthony West about how to challenge things properly or just not be afraid to. And sometimes we have an intuition based on logic. It's almost like our soul speaks to us. And if you look at the electric universe, I believe this is what kind of spawned this. Like, this is logic, this feels right. Well, that can't be an explanation just because something feels right to you, or it feels like it's a truth inside. Well, think about that, though. This spawned, look at all of the information and all of the explanations and all of the research that you guys have here at thunderbolts.info based on an inner knowing or just using logic.
Yes. My advice is always to follow your intuition because that's based on feelings, and feelings often bypass the conscious mind and are more accurate in the long run. It's something that's guided me on many occasions. And there is a problem with education. There's no doubt about that. In fact, there's a well-known psychoanalyst, psychologist, a multidisciplinary scholar in the UK, Ian McGilchrist. If you just look him up on Google, you'll see there's a large number of interviews with him, and he has analysed the mechanism, the way the brain works. And his research pointed up the fact that our education systems train the survival side of the brain, which is the one which operates automatically pretty much and is associated with concentrating on how to get food and so on. The other half of the brain, that's the left hemisphere, by the way, in his research, the other half of the brain, the right half, is the one which is sort of got the broader view of things and is the one which looks for activity which may be a threat. It's sort of the lookout, but also sees the broader picture. And he said the interesting thing is that the connection, the corpus callosum between the two sections of the brain is actually inhibitory. One inhibits the other. And he said if our education systems train the automatic side of the brain, the one that you need to get your degree or your qualification, and it doesn't nourish the right-hand side, which is the one which sees the broader picture and asks questions about, what about that over there, So this is, our textbooks and that are filled with so-called facts, and the answers, the correct answers, of course, are in the back of the book. Well, this is not the way to generate enthusiasm for science. Mm-hmm. To do that, you have to pose questions to the students and give them two alternatives to look at and ask them to make their own judgment of which is the better answer, rather than just giving them an answer. If we were to do that, I think kids would return to science. Also, if we stopped filling blackboards with equations and explained what those symbols mean physically, in other words, we'd be doing applied mathematics instead of pure mathematics, I think you would engender far more enthusiasm for science. Right now, when I was at university, the people who did pure mathematics sort of went off into highly imaginative ways of manipulating equations, and they're interested in the beauty of those equations. Well, this is an artist competition. It's nothing to do with science. Anyway, getting back to the this way of making a decision about what is right and what is wrong. this training, unfortunately, means that experts are set up so that they come out of their education and feel that they know more about a particular specialty than anyone else, and therefore they can pronounce what is possible and what's impossible. Now, you can only say something is impossible if you know everything, and nobody is trained to know everything. In fact, the information is not available to know everything. So beware of any expert who says something is impossible, because generally they turn out to be wrong. You've only got to look at history to see that. But people are too ready, experts are too ready to say things are impossible, and as a result, experts are the last people on earth to know when a paradigm shift is coming, because they will say it's impossible, they will ignore it. The other aspect about training is that once you've learned a bad habit in school, it's very hard to shift it. There is a psychologist I know here in Australia who has introduced systems into schools that is what he called remedial mediation. In other words, you've got to show the students who've got this wrong idea, both the wrong idea and the right idea, and how you arrived at each, and then present them with puzzles which ask them to address both sides of the possible answers. And he's found that you have to do that repeatedly before finally the people use their brain, use their logic to come up with the right answer, rather than just a knee-jerk response which says that's impossible. So we have a lot to learn in the way we educate people and inspire them to do science.
Yeah, we don't. We really don't teach people, I guess, how to think. Like, that's one of the things I think is one of the biggest problems, right? Like, we don't teach people how to ask the right questions and then be confident about what we asked. Because you always hear that, look, there's no dumb questions, feel free to ask a question. But that's not really the case when it comes to stuff like this, especially in academia. You should be able to ask whatever questions. And that's why I really believe people like John Anthony West and others were a bit brutal about things when they got on stage and spoke, because they saw that, you know, how people were treated in academia if they asked questions, because they were treated as if they were asking a dumb question, you know.
Yes. You've got to have a broader understanding, I think, of human nature, and this is something that's not taught to scientists either. Otherwise, they'd have a little more humility if they realise all of the failures of our brains and the way they work and the possible ways of getting things wrong. A little more education in that and psychology, I think, wouldn't go astray. I attend these meetings at the research schools in a local national university, and I feel very sorry for the PhD candidates there when they get up and they explain what they're doing, because I can see that they, if I was to try and tell them that there was a mistake in their logic, they wouldn't be able to see it, because, strangely enough, you can be trained not to see something which is obvious to somebody who's never been trained in the subject. So you should never be afraid as an outsider from coming in and asking awkward questions, because they're only awkward for the expert if the expert can't say, I don't know.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. That's so true. So one of the things that I want to understand here that we talk about a lot, and it comes up a lot in this field, is sunspots and solar flares. I'm trying to understand the effect on that. I mean, because based on what you guys' theory is about the sun and regular cosmology about the sun, is it really just energy? Is that all it is? I mean, because I read Robert Schoch's book, right, Forgotten Civilization, and he talks about how, which I know him and Carlson don't agree on, but how the stuff that he's finding could very well be because we had a big event, right? We had a big solar event that happened, and, you know, Robert knows his stuff. So I'm wondering how do you, because I don't want to speak for him, but how do you guys explain that, solar flares and sunspots?
It's perfectly understandable that card-carrying scientists like Robert and also the plasma cosmologist Tony Peratt pull back from mentioning our reconstruction of the history of the solar system, because it's too much for people. It's completely off the map from our education systems, because we're taught that the solar system is a clockwork thing that's been wound up 4.5 billion years ago and has more or less ticked along like a clock with a few adjustments by persons unknown at various times. So to avoid that, what these people do in academia is point to something which people do understand in the form of solar activity, but what we're talking about is nothing like that. The solar flares and that end up sending plasma. Plasma is belched out of the sun at very high velocity, and we encounter this stream of plasma, which is charged particles, which then interfere electrically with the Earth and its weather systems and earthquakes and volcanoes, all those things. What happened in the past, though, were direct arcs between planetary bodies. And when I say direct arc, there is a little more detail to it than that. The ancients actually described such a thunderbolt. They said it is like a spark spat from a fire. And this is the plasmoid. The plasmoid is the concentrated electrical energy which is transferred through space in the plasma as in the plasmoid form. And it takes some spectacular shapes which were understood by Anthony Peratt, who was the expert on this subject in plasma physics. When he saw them, he said, yes, I've seen them in the laboratory. And we had a meeting in the year 2000 in Portland, which was probably a historic meeting and should go down in the history books, because we had at that meeting both Anthony Peratt, who was a leading plasma physicist and plasma cosmologist, and Halton Arp, the astronomer, who had proven that the universe is not expanding, and the leading mytho-historians, David Talbott, Ev Cochran, and Eduardo Cardona, and also another guy who's been putting together an encyclopedia of all of that material, Rens van der Sluis. Now, that room and the things that occurred, I'm sure will go down in the history books, because in that meeting, Tony Peratt got up on a whiteboard and started drawing images of these things he'd seen in the lab. And as he drew them up, all of the mytho-historians, their hands shot up and said, yes, we've got thousands of examples of that. And yes, we've got, pages and pages of examples of that. And Tony Peratt was absolutely astonished. And of course, it included these strange petroglyphs in the desert surrounding Los Alamos. And Tony said, I never thought about it, but he said, I've been walking past these petroglyphs, these images on the rocks, when he went out hunting in the desert, and he said, I didn't put two and two together until now. And so when he went back to his lab, Dave Talbott wrote to him and said, you talked about this one particular form which looks like a string of arrows, each one shot into the tail of the other, stretching up into the sky. He said, have you got any with several of them together, side by side? And Tony said no, but he said, I'll do an experiment and try it again. And he came back and he said, yep, I've got them. So that was an example where the science of the 21st century matched up with our science of prehistory. We put the two together. Now, no one has ever done that before. And this extends the view of astronomers back into history, and not only that, back into prehistory.
What do you think? So the biggest thing here is when we look out into space and we see all of these different things, planets and comets and asteroids and dust and nebulas. So what you're saying is we look at all these things as separate things in space that were in modern cosmology. They look at these things that way. That's in an expanding universe caused by a Big Bang. And what you're saying is that all of the stuff that we're actually seeing is in some type of plasmic circuitry. It's kind of one thing. It's not really separate. Yes. There is a plasma circuit which connects the sun to the galaxy,
And we're part of that circuit. That's why we're constrained to the plane that you see, the plane of the planets. And even the spacing of the orbits of the planets is mediated by the fact that the electrical nature of a body also affects its gravitational mass. And so the planets adjust each other electrically with their cometary tails. They're invisible. They're dark mode plasma discharges. And so when Mars lines up opposite the sun, it gets tickled by the Earth's magnetotail, they call it, which is actually a kind of one of these Birkeland electric currents. And when it does that, hey presto, what happens on Mars? The ionosphere has this blue glow which clears, and it gets those massive planet-wide dust storms. So we still mess with Mars, but only in a very minor way. And the same thing with Venus. Venus tickles the Earth too when we line up with that Venus and the Sun. Yes, everything is connected electrically, but there is another aspect to the universe which was prevented by Einstein and his idea that nothing could travel faster than the speed of light, and that is that the electric force is instantaneous, and so is gravity, which means that the LIGO experiments are based on a false model, and they're wasting their time. They're not detecting what they say they are. Because they look at the signals based on the speed of light difference between the two different observatories, but gravity travels instantly. There is no time delay.
You know what's really sad about all this, though, real quick, I just want to mention, I had a thought that if Neil deGrasse Tyson came out and said, you know what, I've looked at this electric universe theory, and I think there's something to it. We need to look into this deeper. That would change, and I know that's ridiculous, right? What does it matter what he says? I mean, even though he's a scientist. But if he went out into the media and said that instead of trying to negate it and back up what's been told, at the very least, we would all be looking at it. You know,
that's right.
It would change
he would
everything.
He would have to have a lot of courage to do that, because it would be the end of his career as a media proponent of the accepted views. And the difficulty he faces too is that he could look at what we're doing and be blind to it, actually not see the evidence. It's quite strange. It is actually a case of looking at something and not seeing it.
Kind of like the way the conscious and the unconscious work.
Yes.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
That is it Oliver Sacks and his books on how the mind works, and it's quite strange. But it has been shown that somebody who has damage to the connection between the right and left hemispheres of the brain can be shown something, and they can't articulate what it is, because the left hemisphere doesn't recognize it, can't see it.
Yeah, you are right about that. You're so right. We've talked about that quite a bit, the conscious and the unconscious, what we don't know that's underneath going on, running the show, right? The all-seeing eye. We really got to stop and say, okay, yeah, I think I'm running the show, but really there's a whole other thing going on underneath here that's running the show. A fascinating point you brought up in that speech I brought up earlier is when you explained science, you said that, well, science explains kind of like the least of everything of what we don't know. Then they give it a name, and then they find something else, a limit to what we don't know. So it's just a bunch of things explaining what we don't know. And when you think about it that way, which is, I find that to be true, then I don't see why we can't all just, I guess us that aren't worried about our careers, really look into this a bit deeper and find out that there's some truth to this. When I look out into space and I watch these videos, and it's just so mystical, the universe, right? And you're thinking, man, how does this work? That's so fantastic. But when I look at a picture on your website, the windy galaxies, right? That makes sense to me. Winds and shock waves.
Yeah, winds and shock waves are the only thing that when you've got a gravitational universe, you've got very little to work with. You've got to have explosions to separate things, and then they fall back again and they collide. So you've got collisions and explosions. That's a pretty limited toolkit for somebody who wants to build a universe. The Electric Universe points out that gravity is a function of the constitution of actual particles inside every atom. So every atom is producing the gravitational force, and magnetism is also the response of a subatomic particle to an electric force which is accelerating them. It distorts the particles so that you end up with a transverse dipole electric force, which we call magnetism. And gravity is the same kind of thing, because in the Earth, all of the heavy nuclei sink to towards the center of the Earth, which means that every atom is distorted like a football shape. And that means the end of the football facing the surface is more negative than the other end where the positive nucleus is sunk, facing towards the center of the Earth. This makes gravity a balanced force because it can be, just like magnetism, attractive or repulsive. And we've all played with magnets, and you can see that if you have the north and south poles facing, they'll slam together. If you pull them apart and rotate one of them so that the same poles, the two north poles, are facing one another, they push each other apart. It's hard to push them together. Well, gravity is exactly the same. And what Halton Arp discovered was that all celestial bodies must push one another apart, and that our solar system is held together as a little clockwork system simply because all of the matter in the rest of the universe is pushing inwards and the sun is pushing outwards against us. This is counterintuitive at first because our experience of gravity is all on the Earth, but all of the atoms in our body are aligned with those of the Earth, which pull towards the center of the Earth. And so this is what we observe, and so we just extrapolate it out there into the universe. And this is typical of science, and it's always been the way. Whatever we observe here, we try and make it universal. So we've got a universal gravitational constant. Who says so? Who says it's universal? That was just an assumption. And also the speed of light is universal. That's an assumption as also. And the masses of subatomic particles will be the same as we measure them on Earth. No, the evidence out there is that particles or objects that have just been born from the centers of galaxies have a high redshift, which means the masses of their protons and electrons is actually less than it is on Earth. So much of science needs revising. Fundamental science needs proper definitions. It has to return to the principles of science. There's no effect without a cause. The electric force has to be recognized as a dynamic force which operates instantly throughout the universe and connects everything. So everything is connected in this universe. It's not isolated by time and space at all. It changes our whole view of our place in the universe.
Yeah. Well, you just said something that resonated with me heavily as we go into our mid-news break here. There's no effect without a cause. I think we really need to look at that real deep.
Yes.
We'll be right back with Walt Thornhill.
To call Joe, pick up the phone, dial 1-800-588-0335, toll free from the United States or Canada.
Hola, Fringe listeners. This is Dave Cruz of Beyond the Strange, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Parabnormal News. I'm Brad Bernards. Saturday, August 24th marked a vexing anniversary for planetary scientists, according to a report in Science Alert. It was 13 years to the day that Pluto's official definition changed. What was once numbered among the planets of the solar system was now but a humble dwarf planet. But not everyone agreed with the International Astronomical Union's ruling, and now NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine has added his voice to the chorus declaring support for Pluto's membership in the Solar System Planet Club.
Just so you know, in my view, Pluto is a planet, and you can write that the NASA Administrator declared Pluto a planet once again. I'm sticking by that. It's the way I learned it, and I'm committed to it.
It's an off-the-cuff, lighthearted remark, and that's fine. But it just so happens that planetary scientists have been banging the Pluto planet drum for years, and their reasons are a little more considered. Scientists last year argued that a planet should be defined as an object that has become large enough to become a sphere. Gravitational wave hunters may have spotted their most exotic quarry yet, according to sciencemag.org. On August 14th, a trio of gigantic detectors in the United States and Italy detected a pulse of gravitational waves. Ripples in space itself apparently set off when a black hole and a neutron star spiraled into each other about 900 million light years away. Here's science reporter Nicole Mortellaro from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
And these neutron stars are really fascinating because just like black holes, there are these massive objects. In this case, we're talking it has mass, so weight. And neutron stars are amazing because neutron stars are about the size of a small city, about 20 kilometers across.
Working with Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, or LIGO, which has twin detectors in Hanford, Washington and Livingston, Louisiana, and Virgo, a gravitational wave detector near Pisa, Italy, scientists may have spotted the merger of a black hole and a neutron star. Find all of tonight's news at parabnormalradio.com. I'm Brad Bernards, Parabnormal News.
Listen, I want to tell you about G.I. Joy from GetTheT.com. It's the best alchemical concoction of goodies for your stomach and digestive system I can recommend, and that's all based on my experience. Packed with colostrum, acidophilus, aloe, peppermint, and turmeric. If you do your own research, then you know this is the bee's knees for the stomach and digestion. Now, due to Big Brother's ears and the eye in the sky, you know I can't go into the details about what it helped me with. All I can say is I got relief. It's non-GMO, no fillers, no preservatives, manufactured right here in the US of A, and delivered to you by the only people who stay on top of the game and are out in front. Go grab a bottle of G.I. Joy at GetTheT.com and see what all the fuss is about. Again, that's GetTheT.com.
We all have that story to tell in our lives. The winds were howling, the ground shook, you could hear rushing water, and then history repeats itself. When there's no power, refrigeration fails, stores with their shelves stripped bare, ATMs can't operate, deliveries stop. Then what? These events can last days or weeks. You need a plan. In statements made during recent interviews, FEMA Administrator Brock Long has repeatedly urged all Americans to understand three truths. FEMA is broke, the system is broken. If this is the new normal, Americans can't rely on federal cavalry when disaster strikes. Don't get caught out in the elements empty-handed. Prepare with us by going to preparewiththefringe.com and get your 2-week food supply. 92 servings, 8 food varieties with 25-year shelf life. Normally $137, now only $75. Or get a month's supply, normally $247, now only $147, shipped in one business day. Just go to preparewiththefringe.com or call 888-440-7931. That's 888-440-7931. Get this great offer and be prepared while it lasts.
Hi, this is Kronox from Belgium, and you're listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
You're listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. If you would like to text, you can text in at 501-777-5631.
Very, very cool discussion tonight, talking about the electric universe with the one and only Wall Thornhill. If you guys have any questions, now's the time to call in. Numbers 1-800-588-0335. You can also call in as well at 501-424-5130 if you would like to call in. Sometimes that 1-800 number, it gets full. For some reason, it doesn't forward properly, so that's the direct number that it forwards to. You can also ask in the chat room or text in your questions. For reference to, I want to say, again, thunderbolts.info is one of the best websites to look up this stuff. I do want to talk to you all about some misconceptions that we've already kind of discussed some of them, and I think it's important to go over that because people look at things like gravity, which you've discussed in length on here so far, or how big is the universe. But one question that I did get in text and that I find is pretty good for basic minds like myself, like where's the conductor, so to speak?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is a good question. And the answer is that plasma self-organizes. And you can see this in a small plasma ball, those novelty plasma balls, that when current flows through a plasma, it forms those filaments and they snake around. And that's precisely what happens in space. And it's have quite a complex, they've got a central column and twisting filaments, two filaments together that spin around one another, a bit like a DNA molecule, looks like stretched out. And it's the rotation of this system which causes the rotation of stars. They're built inside one of these things, and so they rotate. And they also tend to form two stars close together or two planets close together, which is what we observe and hasn't been explained satisfactorily by theorists. Now,
gotcha. Okay.
In deep space, they're huge, these filaments. They can extend, they're bigger than the solar system. And because they're so big, there's not enough material in them to glow. But when they get into a cloud of matter, they tend to pinch down. And where it pinches down, it forms a shape which is like a dumbbell almost, with the two large ends, and then it pinches down to this neck. And it's in the neck that all the interesting stuff happens and where you'll find stars, because stars draw their power. They attract these Birkeland currents to sort of wrap around them and power them. There are examples in deep space where you see what are called planetary nebulae, where you can actually see the circuit lit up because there's enough material being around the star for it to light up the circuit. And so we've got direct evidence, visual evidence of this circuit connection of stars to the galaxy. And what's more, galaxies themselves are connected to even bigger Birkeland currents that stretch between them. And this gives rise to galaxies that spin with their axis in the same direction, which has totally puzzled astronomers because there's no reason on Earth why gravity would do that. They should be randomly oriented, especially if they're built by collisions of other galaxies. But the electric universe model says no, galaxies and stars and planets avoid collisions, and they merely exist along these cosmic power lines.
Aha. Okay. Yeah, that's fair enough. All right. Looks like we got 410 area code. You're on the air with Wall Thornhill. Who are we speaking with? All right, Fee. I don't know why your sound isn't coming through, but what can I help you with? What's your question? Yeah, we got you. I got you down. What's your question for Mr. Thornhill?
Okay. Hi, Mr. Thornhill. It's
Hi.
nice to hear from you. It's I've been looking forward to this broadcast. I'm interested in the electric universe, and I was wondering if you could answer a few of the questions that my physics professors aren't really giving me satisfying answers to.
Yes.
So
I'll give it a try.
One of the more I appreciate that. One of the more fundamental questions that I have. So I agree that it it appears that electromagnetism, electric forces seem to be governing cosmology more than gravitational forces. What I'm having difficulty understanding is how electromagnetism actually works, so to speak. Because when I ask my physics professors, for instance, they tell me that electromagnetism is a wave that travels without a medium, and right off the bat, that just doesn't really compute for me. I just have trouble wrapping my head around that. And their explanation is that Maxwell's equations solve for a traveling wave, and there's no constants for a medium.
Yes.
And that's, I've tried to get a more physical explanation out, but I can't really parse anything out. I was wondering if you and your team have come up with something more, I guess, in reality, so to speak.
Okay, yes, I know exactly what you mean. Yes, Maxwell did require a medium, and of course electromagnetism does require a medium to transfer a disturbance through what is otherwise an empty space. Even Einstein knew there had to be a medium, and yet somehow or another he got rid of it without explaining how he could do that. So the non-detection of the ether, the experiments done were really not well designed, and also they did detect an ether movement residual, and it was just assumed that they could just say, oh well, forget it, it's experimental error or something. But it was performed more accurately by another chap some years later who did it at different altitudes as well, and he determined that there is an ether drift. So we have to reinstitute the ether. Now, as to your question what this means physically, Maxwell didn't know. It seemed to have characteristics which were impossible to associate with anything that we observe or work with in normal life. It had to be able to sort of pass through matter. It had to be everywhere, so to speak, even down at the atomic level, inside atoms and so on, for the electromagnetic force to operate there. And it also, he had a model which involved spinning vortexes. But then he ran into problems that you need ball bearings to stop them grinding to a halt. So he more or less gave up on it. The electric universe says, it is a medium, and because it's a material medium, it must have some mass, but it must be vanishingly small because we haven't been able to detect it yet. And also it must be constituted, like all particles, subatomic particles, from a smaller system of orbiting particles, rather like little solar systems. It's a repeated pattern idea where the electrons and protons both have structures, and those structures are like little solar systems, if you like, with a central nucleus of a certain charge and then a number of these other smaller particles of the opposite charge orbiting around them, a repeated pattern. Now, when I looked at that, I knew of a paper that had been published by a radiation physicist back in the early 70s, Professor Horace Dudley, and he asked the question, could it be that the ether is a sea of neutrinos? And I thought, now there's a damn good idea. And it also explains some of the problems that Halton Arp faced with his quasars being born from the centers of galaxies. So I have adopted that model, and I think it makes sense. And it also means that neutrinos must have some mass, even though it's vanishingly small. And now, of course, they're saying, yes, they must have some mass. For a long while, I remember when I was at university, I was taught that a neutrino is disembodied spin. Well, you explain that to me. In other words, it's non-physical. And the idea is that an electromagnetic wave is a result of, you imagine an aerial, a vertical aerial, and it's broadcasting. The signal is actually an alternating electric field, along that wire. That means that the neutrinos near it, which are polarizable, all subatomic particles are polarizable electrically, means that they will align their little induced electric dipoles in the same direction as the aerial, in other words, vertical, at the maximum point of the signal. But when the signal starts to reverse polarity, as it does with an RF signal, the little neutrino has to spin. So it has to go through 360 degrees for every cycle of the RF signal. So Maxwell was right. And, of course, one neutrino has to pass that signal on to the next one, to the next one. And it's like a wave traveling down what would you call it? A loose rope with one end tied and the other end waving up and down. And so the speed of light is merely the speed of that, bucket brigade, if you like, passing on this rotation from the transmitter to the receiver. So that's it. The magnetism and the electric force and the magnetism is caused by the distortion of those neutrinos, because when you distort them, they form a little football shape, and that distortion also causes a transverse 90-degree dipole electric force within that particle, which then we call the magnetic force. So that's my view of electromagnetism. Certainly it isn't a photon or a particle. You can't have a photon for a radio broadcast. It just doesn't make any sense. But also you cannot have a photon which is supposed to have no mass. There is no particle, no physical particle in the universe which has no mass.
Does that help you any, Fee?
It's definitely an interesting idea. I've heard of the idea of neutrinos, but neutrinos being the ether, so to speak.
Yes.
So what you're saying is the neutrino. So it's kind of like how a neutron, even though it's net neutral charge, the quarks inside of it actually have their own charge. It's kind of like that with a neutrino, where those can be polarized.
Yeah, you've opened up a whole new subject here, because neutrons don't exist inside an atom. They only exist outside it for 14 minutes or so. They're a partnership between an electron and proton, a temporary one to allow the particles to escape from the nucleus. But a neutrino must be composed of all of the subparticles required to make a particle and its so-called antiparticle. There's no such thing as an antiparticle. It's merely a mirror particle made up of the same components as the electron and the proton. For instance, the electron and the positron, when they come together and join, go back to their original state as a neutrino. Because you cannot, this is one of the principles of physics which has been discarded in the 20th century, and that is you cannot create or destroy matter. But they willy-nilly do it, and they do it in nuclei too with their quarks. You can forget quarks and gluons and all the other nonsense inside subatomic particles. They are mere mathematical inventions trying to save the appearances. It's much simpler to adopt the idea that nature is not trying to be difficult for us to understand. It's only the experts who make it so. And that if we just repeat the atomic model at a smaller scale and apply the great German scientist Wilhelm Weber's electrodynamic law to the behavior of these things, we'll understand a hell of a lot more about nuclear physics. By the way, our SAPPHIRE experiment is showing that the electric universe model of nuclear reactions is correct, and that is that we can do nuclear chemistry in that experiment.
Fee, that's some pretty...
Yeah, I actually... sorry?
No, go ahead, brother. If you got another question, go right ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to take up too much time.
Oh, you're all right.
They're good questions.
Yeah, I actually, no, thank you. I watched the Sapphire video, the one you released, I guess.
Good.
Earlier today, yeah. And I was really interested by that experiment. One little thing it brought to mind, and a recommendation if you already haven't looked into it, is to look into the work of Ken Shoulders. He did a lot of work in, he passed away, I think 6 years ago, but he did a lot of work in high intensity capacitor discharges. So having like a really sharp cathode, striking anode plate, and he would get element transmutation a lot like you saw in the Sapphire experiment.
Yes.
And I just thought it was kind of interesting because maybe it's a similar phenomenon going on. So that's just something I thought I'd mention.
Yes, that's quite possible because the energies involved are that much higher than in chemistry. But we've been able to reproduce those energy levels, it seems, in the in our little electric sun experiment. And we've done it such that, the professional labs have been able to analyse the before and after and shown that, yes, these new elements that weren't there before.
Fee, you got to send me your contact info, man, so you can get the tea. Remember that. Contact info. You still owe it to me, brother.
Oh. What? When was that?
That was back in the day. It's all right. If it's all right, I'll direct message you. I got some questions in the chat I want to ask real quick, but have you got one more comment or question?
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering if I have to choose. Okay. I was just wondering, with the Sapphire experiment, I understand it's a really fascinating plasma experiment. I was just wondering if you could help me understand how that proves that the sun is an electrical phenomenon.
The test was to find out if we could match the plasma environments that are measured by spacecraft in interplanetary space, and also to look at the energy levels in the plasma and to see whether they matched the sort of things we see in the corona and so on. There's also the phenomena at the anode, which we found very early on, and that is the cause of the granulation effect in the photosphere. And all of that has just fallen into place as I had hoped it.
Well, there you go.
Okay, and yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, man. Just one more, and I got to let you go on it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, you're all right. Go ahead. That's fine.
Let's see. So, with the Sapphire experiment, so in the experiment, your anode was a metal, I think it was an alumina sphere. So, how does that correlate to the structure of an actual star? Is that...
That's a good question. The electric or the plasma cosmologists have shown that all bodies in those cosmic discharges in molecular clouds where stars are formed will have all of the heavy elements at the center, and they will be cool, so that the idea that a star forms from hydrogen and it collapses and that heats it up and it starts the nuclear reactions is absolutely incorrect. Also, the fact that gravity, the force was discarded by Einstein, so it's not understood. When you understand the electric universe model of gravity, it shows that the interior of these bodies is nothing like what we've been told. And it is cool down there. That's why sunspots are dark, because where the photosphere parts, that's the electrical discharge level in the ionosphere of the star, it's cool down below.
Fantastic. Thank you for asking the questions. Those good questions, and I know that to especially when you're not sure, don't agree on something, to take on Wall Thornhill on this isn't. You're braver than most, Fee. You know that, so that's why we have no problem letting you ask questions, man. Good call. Thank you for calling in.
All right. Thank you for giving me the time. I appreciate it.
No problem, brother. So I got one more real quick, and then I know that you've got to get on your way here. Does Mr. Thornhill think that the sun is a toroidal field? That's a good question. It was something that I actually had in my notes I wanted to bring up to you, was toroidal fields. It's something that we look at in spirituality quite a bit. What is your thoughts on that?
It's a bit hard to know what you actually, the reference. What physical thing are you talking about?
A toroidal field is like a donut where it flows in to the middle and out, and then back underneath. That field. The toroidal field is a natural form of a ring current about a body, and the sun has a ring current about it. The Earth has a ring current, and that will form a toroidal magnetic field. One of the things that you find in modern physics is that the field is bandied around as a description of something which is never specified, and that's because they got rid of the ether. But a field requires a material ether to actually mean anything. Otherwise, it's like talking about the weather without any air. I think people have to be aware that the field is not an explanation of anything. It's a description of the conditions in space at any given point. But as for the toroidal fields, they will be caused by ring currents, and there are certainly ring currents induced around the bodies in the solar system. Fantastic. And look, guys, if you go to the thunderbolts.info website, there is a ton of information on here. All e-guides, all the misconceptions, the YouTube videos, all of the events. Do you guys have any upcoming events right now, by the way? I wanted to ask that.
There's nothing over the next few months, but the very fact of the success of the Sapphire experiment may change that.
Yeah, I know that someone brought up earlier that China actually made some type of, sun mock-up where it produced a whole bunch of energy, but I didn't really get to look into all of the different variables like you're talking about. So did you look into that at all?
Every experiment I've seen has been nothing like ours. One of the reasons for that is that very early in the 20th century, when we started building valves for radios and television, the concentration was always on the cathode, which is the thing that produces the electrons and allows the valve to function. That's why you used to wait for them to warm up, because they're warming up the cathode to produce the electrons in those old radios and televisions. And the anode was ignored. It was only the genius, the engineer Ralph Jurgens, who bothered to look at the phenomena associated with the anode. And in an electric discharge, the phenomena are quite distinct and they're different. So anyone who's done experiments using the old valve kind of paradigm has always concentrated on the cathode, and they will not get the results we get. And I've never seen anyone, there have been some experiments which were not actually investigating what we're investigating, but none of them have gone to the extent that we have. In fact, there were some nuclear physicists from Ottawa who we presented the Sapphire experiment to, and they said it's the most advanced experiment of its type in the world.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, and thank you for all of the detailed explanations, just as I thought you would give. You're like one of the most patient people when it comes to this. I can't believe how patient, how much knowledge you have on this. And I want to tell everybody to give you guys a like and follow on social media. Subscribe to the Thunderbolts Project on YouTube, the holoscience.com. Thunderbolts.info is, to me, my favorite one because it's got so much information. And thanks again for coming on. It's been a real informing experience for sure.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. My Holoscience website has sort of fallen a bit by the website and is more of a historical record right now, although there's some effort being made to restore it, because all of my attention has been on the Thunderbolts, our main website. So that is the most up to date.
Right. Okay. Noted. And thanks you for coming on. Yeah, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks for coming on, Wal. I really appreciate it.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll be right back with some final thoughts and some stories that I have that line up exactly with this. And we're going to talk a little bit more about intuition. We'll be right back.
After hunting down half-ton bison, I look forward to a mind-teetering escapade evening on The Fringe FM.
Are you intrigued by paranormal talk radio? You'll love the new paranormal radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Every region of the world and most countries can go back in their history and trace their origins, traditions, and religions to a creator god or an angel from the sky, the stars, heaven, or even underground from the underworld. This is the common story of extraterrestrials seeding our planet. My name is Reverend John M. Polk. I am an international metaphysical minister, a Reiki master teacher, and a medium. My book is Yahweh, the Biblical God, is an Alien. The premise of my book is that there is a real God and that Yahweh is a creator God alien who is indicating he is ready to reveal his alien origins to humanity at this time.
Introducing Shadow Light Tarot from Waking Canvas, the Fringe FM's new contributing artist Eric Tesey. This hand-illustrated black and white self-published deck serves as a reinvention of the tarot never before witnessed. Each of the several suits of this 88-card deck lineup form an infinite panoramic scene. Even the included visual companion guidebook is entirely hand-illustrated, cover to cover, with beautiful visuals and esoteric symbols and artwork. The newly released deck comes in a custom magnetic box with its own travel pouch. The Shadow Light Tarot Premium Deck and its travel-sized mini deck Wonder Light Tarot are both available now from WakingCanvas.com. If you use the code word FRINGE, that's F-R-I-N-G-E at checkout, you'll receive an extra 10% off your entire order. To discover more, including a free reading and time lapses of all the illustrated artwork, make your way over to WakingCanvas.com today. That's WakingCanvas.com.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of the Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
Hi, this is Aaron Hunter, host of Real Paranormal Activity, the podcast, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. Fascinating discussion with Walt Thornhill. That there's a lot of information in that, and I think it's funny. Like Jose said in the chat room, he's like, "Man, I'm so lost." Right? So really, what you have to do, it's easy to get lost when you've never heard of the electric universe, right? What is that? And like in the beginning of the show, as I explained, that it is simply an alternate theory to what's going on in the cosmos, right? And it makes sense to me. It makes sense to a lot of people, especially spiritual people as myself, or hermetic people that follow the as above, so below mentality, because things line up easier with the electric universe theory. It's the plasma thing that I had to understand, that it's not all a bunch of separate things, that it's just one plasma field. Everything's run on electromagnetic currents. And then once you start getting into the deeper stuff, Jose, and here's where I'm going to tell you the God's honest truth, is that I'm lost too. And that's why you got the e-guides on there at the website, because it's a vast, these guys have spent years on picking apart every little detail, and you can tell, like, say, for instance, when Fee called in, that he's done his research on it and he's got questions about it, and all of that stuff is on the website. But to go through the beginning part of it is the most important thing. And I think my biggest point of doing this show is to understand that asking the right questions sometimes means a lot. You and I think that because we're not educated, because we don't have a master's degree or a PhD, and don't get me wrong, those people are very intelligent, they put the work in, they deserve what they get. But there are still questions in the void that the soul wants to know. And when the soul wants to know, hey, are we alone? Why does the universe do what it does? And we look at the scientists and they say, well, this is this. And then you just nod your head and say, well, okay. A lot of us still don't have the answers that we want on the inside. Like, it doesn't add up. And this whole theory, I feel, and I could be wrong, wasn't really based on measuring or experiments at first. It was just based on a concept, right? Well, what if, and it's just a question, what if the universe is run on some type of electromagnetic current? That would make more sense logically in what's going on. And then you do the research to find out. But by the time you get so deep into it, academia has already got their answer for everything, and they can't be challenged. And that causes problems. So, yeah, you're not the only one that's lost on this. I think we all are. And speaking of which, when I wanted to talk about energy and some of the stuff that has happened to me, some of the I guess you can say synchronicities that have happened in my life that have made me kind of look at the electric universe theory as on a more basic level as it relates to the occult and occult science and mysticism and the spirit. And, of course, in the third hour, I know you guys are getting used to her here. Lady Ann is here with me, who has done, by the way, some work, because I'm going to just kind of shift this into energy and less about electricity at the moment, who knows a little bit about energy and how it works. And I have such a hard time with this. You guys know that. And I think it's kind of epic that at my peak of talking about how I have a hard time with energy and woo-woo stuff, right, that Lady Ann shows up on the Fringe FM. So welcome back, Lady Ann. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
So
I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy you're here too. And what are your experiences with that? Like, you know what I'm talking about, how you have an intuition and you don't want to seem crazy. You don't want to sound woo-woo or seem insane to people.
Right.
Well, at least that's what I think. But you're the one person that when I have these questions to, and we've had these conversations on and off the air, where you're like, look, I understand all the stuff that's going through your mind, and it's just like monkey mind stuff, but can you just slow down for a second and try to feel something?
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty big deal, right? We should be able to do that.
Right. It's different for everybody. I don't think that not all of us can necessarily feel it, and we also do feel it in a lot of different ways. It's also hard for me to really put it into words. There's a lot of times where I would get asked, well, what is Reiki and how does it work? And usually what I would like to do is I go, well, come here, and I have them put out their hands, and I hover my hands above theirs, and I ask, do you feel that?
Right. Do you think it's psychosomatic, though? Like, sometimes I wonder if they want to feel it, and that's why they're saying that they do. Or do you just kind of trust that it's happening?
Well, you can do it in a couple different ways. There's an earth energy, air, fire, water, and they each feel different. So I will change the energy when I'm hovering my hands above somebody else, and I'll ask them what they feel. And usually, if they're sensitive to it, if they're actually feeling it to begin with, they will say, well, it feels cold, or it feels like a magnet, and it corresponds with the energy that I had sent them or changed it to. So for me, I take that as it's actually happening. It's not something that they're making up in their head. This is actually happening.
That's fair enough. And I mean, you've seen results with it? Like you've seen real healing results with it?
I have, actually, yeah. I went to a healing group for years, from the time I think I was 16, or no, I was 15, and I went all the way till I was probably 22 every single Sunday.
Wow.
There was a lot that happened, yeah. It was amazing.
Yeah, see, we had some guests on that talk about this stuff, like we got all these blocks in our head and our beliefs, and that's something that Wall was talking about too. The whole idea that once we decide we don't believe something, and you don't have to believe it's. I think here's the problem. I think people think that they have to believe one or the other. It's kind of like some people believe, because I'm talking to Wall Thornhill tonight, that I believe in the electric universe theory. Right. Like, well, they just automatically put you in that category because you're asking the questions.
Right.
Like you're one or the other. And see, that's the whole problem that I've been noticing with this lately, that I also struggle with. It goes back to polarity, I think, where people want to, say like make a decision, and you don't get time to ask questions. You don't get time to keep digging to find out. It's almost like society doesn't want you to keep digging. You have to believe one thing or the other. And that's some damn frustrating stuff, I got to tell you.
It is. It does. It takes a lot to break out of the box and go, it's okay to believe in anything. You can ask questions and be interested in a subject and not have to believe it. You can also take bits and pieces from over here and from over there and say, well, this is what I believe. And none of it's wrong. We all have our own paths.
But what about things like, and see, when I hear that too, I struggle. What about things like cosmic truths? Do you believe that there are cosmic truths, like things that cannot be denied, changed, or whatever based on perception? I'm not asking you if you know what they are, but do you believe there are such things?
I don't know.
And see, I do.
I'm not sure.
I believe in cosmic truths, natural law, right? Hermetics. One is love, right? I know that's a real thing. I can't, I mean, I cannot, and there's scientists that have tried to explain it. They say, oh, it's just oxytocin firing off in the brain that makes you feel really close. No. I mean, come on. We all know that love is a real thing. You can't measure it. And it's not like when people say it's air. To me, that's a cosmic truth. Another thing that I've come to believe is as above, so below is a cosmic truth. So when you look at things like fiber optic cables and stuff, and how are we coming to all of this technology of understanding of transferring data through light? Well, it's kind of funny when you look at that and you look at how a signal transfers, right? And circuitry. And then you look at the universe, and then you look at these fractal scales of the human brain. And then they show, have you ever seen that, by the way? Where it shows the human brain and then a picture of the universe, and they look exactly the same.
No, I'll have to check that out.
So you see this more and more, right? And this is what tells me that there are cosmic truths. And this is what we call like occult science, right? This is when people start waking up, realizing there's some type of bigger mystery. Sacred geometry represents some type of cosmic truth because you see it in everything, right? You see the Fibonacci sequence in the waves, eyeballs, thumbprints, when the baby's starting to form, like it's in everything, plants, everywhere. Right. So there's a cosmic truth there. So that tells me, okay, there are some cosmic truths. Now, what are they? And I swear on everything, this is what people think about. They think about this stuff all the time. And when you look at science, it's like regular science. This is the issue with regular science is they negate your experience. They don't totally negate it, but they'd rather find a way to measure it. And then they explain things up to a point of what they don't know, and they stop there, and they go, okay, we're going to call it this. This is to the point that where we don't know. And until we can measure something else, we're done. We're just done here. And our entire scientific academia is kind of based on that alone, and till you get into the cosmos, and that's my point. So they want to say that they can explain everything in the cosmos if you give them one miracle, which is the Big Bang. Well, that's awful convenient. Versus the electric universe theory is they can explain everything, but they don't try to explain where the energy came from. It's kind of like the reason why when Buddha was asked about God, can you explain to me what God is or who or where it came from? There's no way to know that. And so he said, this is pointless. It's useless. There's not just a waste of time. That's an understatement. How about we just experience it, right? And so I think that's what it goes back to. Everything is our experience needs to become more evidence to us. Whether we're looking for cosmic fundamental truths that are true for everybody, or if we're trying to figure out what our truth is. If we throw our experience out the door, we've screwed ourselves over, I believe. And if we don't listen to our intuition, which is something that I've learned over this past year, right? Like, get out of your mind and listen to your intuition a little bit, kind of, right? Like, there's good stuff there. Something's telling you logic. But I'm still curious about this Reiki thing because, when you first started telling me about it, I thought, well, I've heard this before. Everybody's a Reiki master, yada, yada. But even Craven in here said, I took what did he say? He said, I took a class about energy work from some people that were taught in a place called the Berkeley Psychic Institute. Very cool. And, and he said, well, after the first class, I was able to feel the electricity coming off my smartphone screen and battery port, something that I'd never experienced before.
Right.
Science tells us.
It's very powerful.
It is powerful, right? Because that's an experience that changes your paradigm. It wakes you up to things that might be there. But science tells us, well, that can be explained. It was probably a coincidence or whatever. But Craven knows different. That's the screwy part of the brain. I hate the fact that we have to either know or define the point to where we don't know and then stop instead of saying, okay, well, let's just ask more questions. That's all. That's all the void is about. It's asking more questions. And it'll drive you mad if you negate your experience. I think you'll go crazy if you actually say my experience is not my truth.
Right.
What do you think about that? You think that, I want to tell a story, but I kind of don't want to because it's kind of personal. Okay.
Why not?
So we talked about we were talking about the tarot the other day, right?
Right.
And I was trying to explain how the tarot actually has a background. It's got a historical and esoteric background and stuff, and it's not just for divination. Now, the funny thing is, and the paradox about that is that happened to me, is I do a daily tarot meditation. I just do. I pull a card and I just check, I focus on the symbolism of it and study it. Sometimes I'll pull out other tarot decks just to compare and see if I'm understanding what this card is trying to show me. And over time, it is so powerful that a stupid little card to some people with cardboard and pictures on it has shown me things that I just simply cannot deny, but nor can I prove, to the point where it has had me on my knees crying it a couple times. And I know I look like a big baby, but I'm not a big baby, And when those kind of things happen, I'm asked in society to throw that out, or that can't be true, or how can you measure that? Or if I talk to the wrong therapist, I'm going to be in a padded room.
Right. Right. No, it is really hard to explain those types of things because it's true. I also do tarot. I've done it for other people. I've done it for myself. I do try to do a daily tarot. And there is a lot of really powerful stuff that comes through. And I won't deny as well that it has brought me to tears or overwhelming joy or, a message or a picture or something else will come through, that leads me down a deeper path. And it's a very deep and powerful experience.
Yeah. I guess I have this fear of being labeled New Age, right? Do you think I have that fear? Mm-hmm. Be honest with me.
Yeah, maybe a little. I mean, and I don't know. I mean, I think why put a label on things and why try to pick things apart? Why not just experience and let it be?
Oh, and right there, that just triggers me. It triggers me. It's like, what are you going to go do next? Hug a tree, right? Is that what you're going to go do?
Well, why not?
It does. It triggers the hell out of me, but it's okay. I don't have to believe what I'm thinking or what you're saying. It's okay to feel two things that conflict, right? It's okay to do that and not know, but we just still got to keep asking questions. But it's, but what I was getting at is every time I challenge something like that, or I say, well, that's just your belief, or that's just your theory on things, and you don't know, you're not really using your mind, or you're not asking enough questions. The universe turns back around and goes, oh yeah, well, watch this, and throws what's called downloads at me. And I was like, what the hell is this? Where it's almost like my life is flashing before my eyes, showing me all of these different synchronicities and things that add up to the answer to what I'm asking. And I'm like, oh, that's what a download is. Is that what they're talking about? I've been making fun of them the whole time, and that's what that is.
Right. I've experienced that a lot too.
I'm almost afraid to talk about things now, because it just...
Well, don't be.
It smacks me around so much. And I think we have this need to want to know or be right so much that we lose out on finding out some bigger truths. And what I'm getting at is I still believe that there is natural law. I believe there are birthrights that the human race has, powers that we don't know we're aware of, an identity of who we really are that's been hidden from us. And I don't mean on just a conspiratorial level. I'm talking about we've been programming ourselves away from this too. And at every road I go down just keeps leading me to that. I can't explain the ending. I can't tell you exactly what those powers are. I can't tell you exactly what in the hell is being hidden from me. But every one of us feels that. That's why conspiracy is like the number one thing on podcasts. It's the fastest growing podcast out there. Conspiracy stuff. So you dogmen and Sasquatch people are having a rough time out there, aren't you?
I don't know about that. I do want to say it's important to, don't not talk about things. It's important, even if it makes you uncomfortable, if you get downloads that you don't understand. It's just like with tarot reading. I was nervous, to be honest with you. I was really nervous to do readings for anybody else because I didn't want anybody getting mad at me. Because sometimes the cards will slap you in the face and they're like, you already know this and you need to face it. And it's right here. And they didn't want to hear that, but that's exactly what they're going to hear because it's what's important, because we need to face our stuff, There wouldn't be change. There wouldn't be, evolving and all that stuff if not.
Oof. See, now I want to reveal a little bit more. I don't know I've been told I can't talk about personal things, but I feel like if I don't talk about personal things, then you guys aren't really going to hear what I'm saying. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, but that does remind me of something pretty deep that happened to me recently. We'll be right back. Lady Ann's here. If you want to call in, you can. If you got any comments on what we were discussing earlier with the electric universe, it's 1-800-588-0335. Also, you can comment in the Fringe Discord where all the cool people hang out. We'll be right back.
This is James Cruz. You listen to KCLK The Fringe FM.
I like to listen to Lighting the Void because of the guests, the content, and the host, Joe Root. He's smart, he's intelligent, and he seems to ask the questions that we all have on our mind. We're all searching for the truth, and Joe helps us get closer to it. I love this show. I love this show. I love this show. Lighting the Void.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Right, me old Chiners, I know it's an ad break, but before you lot shoot off and make yourself a cup of Rosie Lee or whatever else it is you're going to sling down your Gregory Peck, you need to listen to me babble. If, like me, you found your way to Lighting the Void via a downloadable podcast, you might want to take a butcher's at the Fringe FM Wind and Kite. You won't Adam and Eve how many other shows there are or what they rabbit on about. Ancient history, conspiracy, the consciousness, the esoteric, the occult, metaphysics, parapolitical, ufology, technology and spirituality, to name but a few. They got featured hosts like Ryan Gable, Jeremy Scott, Alex Exum, Tim Doyle, Cortana and Gigi, Susanna Ross, the Reverend John Polk, Michael Deacon and J.D. Lewis. You might find yourself listening to the thoughts and theories of the author of The Fish you just finished reading. Or you could pick up the dog and bone, call in and tell everyone your own beliefs or experiences. So do me a favour, before you put on the Ansel or crack open a bottle of vino or roll a joint, go to the Fringe FM and see what you're missing.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
Did you know that qualified patients can access medical cannabis in all 50 states? CannaSense is a medical cannabis collective that helps patients in all 50 states gain access to cannabis medication. CannaSense does this with a streamlined process and strict compliance with the Compassionate Use Act of 1996, the Affordable Care Act, and the U.S. Constitution. It is important for each patient to understand the legalities involved, the costs, and the benefits of cannabis medication. Through truth, legalization, and education, the medical benefits of cannabis will supplant recreational perceptions, and the real vision for change will be realized. Let the people and their personal doctors take control of their medical cannabis decisions before the greed of big business takes over. The tipping point for change is today, and CannaSense is ready to lead the charge and enable legal access for all qualified patients to medical cannabis through its proven system. For more information, go to thefringe.fm/care or click the banner on the website today.
In your face, all over the place. We're online 24/7. 24/7. You're listening to the hottest internet station. Alex Exum.
This is Alex Exum of the Exum Experience in Live Talk, where we discuss current events, society, and culture. My shows are based in actuality, actual existence, contrasted with what was intended, expected, or believed. You can listen to me live Tuesdays at 7 p.m. only on KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Listen, I want to tell you about G.I. Joy from GetTheT.com. It's the best alchemical concoction of goodies for your stomach and digestive system I can recommend, and that's all based on my experience. Packed with colostrum, acidophilus, aloe, peppermint, and turmeric. If you do your own research, then you know this is the bee's knees for the stomach and digestion. Now, due to Big Brother's ears and the eye in the sky, you know I can't go into the details about what it helped me with. All I can say is I got relief. It's non-GMO, no fillers, no preservatives, manufactured right here in the US of A, and delivered to you by the only people who stay on top of the game and are out in front. Go grab a bottle of G.I. Joy at GetTheT.com and see what all the fuss is about. Again, that's GetTheT.com. Lighting the Void. We just got through speaking with Wall Thornhill, big time speaker and writer, also as well as a ton of information on the website at thunderbolts.info, also the Thunderbolts Project on YouTube. I think it was interesting to talk about the electric universe because in passing everybody talks about it. Yeah, man, that's the electric universe theory, right? We bring it up all the time. We've done 300-something episodes, and people say, yeah, that's that whole electric universe thing. But when you look at the website, as detailed as it is, it's like, okay, yeah, this just isn't an afterthought. They've got explanations for everything. It's almost kind of like the flat earth people, but this is not flat earth. This is more explainable to me. God, I hate it. I even related it to that. So before I talk about this story that I'm still not sure I'm going to say, what I want to say about a fundamental truth is take the flat earth theory, for example, Lady Anne. Okay. I'm challenging you right now. Okay.
All
so
right.
I understand that you're a nurturing person and that you're about kind of like energy, emotion, and feeling, and you're a nurturing person. I'm kind of more left brain. Yeah, left brain. So I try to stay with analytics and what's logical a lot of times. So what I mean by fundamental truth is if I asked you, is it a fundamental truth that the earth is not flat? What would you say to that?
Gosh, well, I mean...
Without worrying about what people are going to think, just,
Well, yeah. I would say, yeah, it's definitely not flat. For sure.
Okay. So that's what I mean by, like, a fundamental truth. All the planets that we know of are kind of round, right? That's a fundamental truth. And so these are the things that I look at. And then other people will ask questions like, well, what do you mean? Well, that's based on how we see. And then people try to drive you crazy with semantics. And you're like, okay, let me put it this way. All of our observations of planets have shown us that they're round. That's a fundamental truth, right? And you'll get arguments about that for people that, well, no, truth is what you say it is. Truth is your version of truth type thing. This, I'm having a hard time with. I just don't think that even describes the word truth. I think that describes the word perception. And I don't mean to be, I don't mean to sound like I'm talking down to people that say that. But that's what I mean by when I think about logical truth. Now, I do understand when people have an experience that they cannot prove, like an out-of-body experience, or as we were discussing earlier, several synchronicities or downloads with things like tarot and stuff. That is your truth or your path or your experience, and it's true to you, But do you see what I mean? Am I making any sense?
Yes, no. I mean, we all have our own perceptions, and we have our own filters that we look through, and what is your truth may not be mine. Yeah, and we all have our own experiences that...
I'll give you one. I'll stir up some stuff.
Okay.
Like Mothman, right? The Mothman to me could be, I guess it could be true, but I just don't think, like there's some people out there that really say, well, it's true, the Mothman exists. Well, the only people that know that to be a truth is the person that actually had a Mothman experience, right?
Right.
The rest of us are just wanting things to be true or hoping it is or hoping somebody validates the idea of Mothman. Thus, you have, the paranormal field, which is, I'm going to piss some people off here. Which is what happens in the UFO field and the Bible is our thing. And everybody gets emotionally involved with what they want to be true. And once you get emotionally involved with what you want to be true, then it becomes, you anchor yourself to it. And then the party's over. It's over. You've stopped asking yourself questions. You already know it all about something. You've put that wall up and it's done. I don't even, it's hard for me to even talk about UFOs anymore because I go to Tim because I know he's not afraid of what people think at all. He'll say stuff based on his truth because of that, because there's just so much stuff out there with it.
Right. There's a lot of things in the UFO. It's really hard because you can take a picture. It could be a satellite. It could be a plane. It could be somebody that's just really wanting attention. There's just so much room for error when it comes to UFO sightings, UFO experiences.
Yeah, it could be a military project that we don't know about.
It could be, right.
But people are emotionally invested in it being aliens, right? It's aliens from another dimension that are here visiting us to give us gifts and protect us. Based on
so that would be interesting. It would be interesting to really talk to those people that really super want this to be real, and they have this picture that even if it's analyzed, they're like, it's really not. But they're like, no, it is. Why? Why do you want it to be true? What is it that you need? Taking it and looking at yourself, using it as a
mirror,
self-reflective learning. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And I think that's what divination is when we we want to predict the future when we use our, or at least for me, okay? I'm going to do the Lady Anne thing. This is my truth, okay, with divination.
Yes.
And my experience with it is that it doesn't really predict my future, that it tells me what's happening right now, like a mirror of the moment. What's happening right now on a bigger scale, as well as the smaller scale. And it helps me make that connection. I guess I have to tell the story to make sense, don't I?
It would be good.
I know. Let's just bear all. Okay. It's scary, man, to talk about this kind of stuff. So I don't have a perfect past. All right. Like I was, when it comes to anything, when it comes to how I treated people, relationships, you name it, not a perfect past. And that, you know, that kind of thing causes suffering, which causes pain, which causes isolation, which causes more suffering, until you figure out you've got to start asking questions. And then I went on the road of the mystery schools and looking into occult science and stuff. So when I started learning about occult science, which just means like hidden science, that's all it means. Things started happening. So if I give you an example, is like with the tarot. The other day I pulled out, well, it was actually yesterday. I pulled out the Justice card, right? Justice.
Mm-hmm.
That's a scary damn card. Do you think Death is a scary card and the Tower? No. Justice is a scary card. Because according to what I believe, everything happens divinely. There's divine justice in everything. That's why I don't believe in victims and victim mentality. I don't believe in it. You may suffer from something that's not of your own causing, and it may be horrible, but we've caused this here as a race because we make stupid decisions, and cause and effect perpetuates, and now we've got people suffering. That's it, right? But what I've noticed is the people that suffer and they pay their karma, so to speak, if you believe in that thing, they believe they're going through some type of karma, and maybe they are, but they'll pay it long enough and then they're done with it. It's like a roller coaster. Well, I thought that I had paid this karma. I went through 10 years of doing without something to paid for my karma. I said, man, it's paid. I know it's paid. And just when I thought that, I draw a card like Justice. And if you read into what that card really means, it's like, okay, a big change is about to happen. Something huge where you're about to have to make a decision. And maybe you guys can, I hate getting into the details of it because it's so personal. But you're about to have to make a decision, and you're going to have to deal with it, right? Be careful of the decision you make because you're going to have to deal with it. So it's like, karma and divine justice has come down upon you, but now you're at a crossroads. And I didn't even think of it. I meditated on the card forever. I was like, oh, that's cool. That's what that means. Da-da-da-da. Well, sure enough, this day, something really big happens. A download, according to the New Agers, right? Just a constant download. But it's like my past and all the ways I treated certain people was like a slideshow. And I was driving in my truck, with my son, and I had to pull over because I consider myself emotionally controlled. I control my emotions. Well, not this time. Because a gift was brought to me that represents that in kind of like a paradox. And I can't tell you what it is. I'm sorry, but I'm just going to try to tell you guys this. A gift was brought to me that was like a paradox. And in this gift is willing to take all of the things and the way I used to treat people, right? But at the same time, I don't want to be that, so it's like, okay, whatever. That's cool. And then more downloads started coming. It was insane. I had this experience earlier today, right? It was insane. And even my son, who's always in his phone, not really paying, he's a teenager, so he's looking at me, he's like, what in the world is wrong with you? And I said, I got to pull over. Pulled over, got it out of my system, got back in control of my emotions, get home, grab the tarot deck again. And the way I do this, just in case you guys are wondering, you should try this, is I will shuffle the deck, like, the 7 planets and the 4 elements, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. You can't deny the spirit and the realm of duality. And that's how I'm cutting the cards. And I do that every time. And then I draw the Wheel of Fortune card. And if any of you guys know what that card means, there's no way, and if you'd have to know the story, but then I had another meltdown. Now this is not in my head. I'm not insane. I'm not crazy. All of this is happening to me. There is no way I can prove this to anybody. And that's why I'm not really sharing the details, because it won't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But now I realize that on a smaller level and a cosmic level, the divine justice that happens in my life, the unwavering divine justice that happens in my life. And then once I've understand it, once I pay that debt, once I finally do realize it on all levels, then I make the choice. Here's a gift. Do you want it or not? I swear I was like, I know, do you get what I'm saying? Kind of. You have to get what I'm saying.
Of course I do. No, there's, I think it was, it was earlier in the week that, I was going through, there were some spiritual books that I was looking into and pulling some cards and stuff. And when you receive these downloads, as you call them, it's, I don't know, for me, I can feel it in my entire body, on my skin and my fingertips, everything. And it's really, really overwhelming to feel, I don't know, just completely connected from here to the universe, and then to be overwhelmed with emotions. It's a really powerful thing. And it's something that you really can't explain with words, and nobody can really understand it unless they've been through it too.
Yeah. And so when you say, well, that's your truth and that's my truth, I get that.
Right.
But it's, what's really intense? The most intense thing I think that happens is when you realize for the first time that you're experiencing your truth as well as a cosmic truth that's a standard for everything and everyone on both levels, the microcosm and the macrocosm, like at the same time. Those experiences you have in your life is the spirit. That's like there is no denying it, right? And I thought it made me think about this verse, and I'm going to bring up the Bible. Praise the Lord, hallelujah, Jesus Christ in the Bible, King James Version. But I'm going to look at it from a mystic point of view, right? And there's a verse somewhere in there that goes like, you can deny the Father and be forgiven. In other words, you can deny that there is a macrocosm and be forgiven. You can deny that there's a microcosm or down here on the earth and be forgiven, right? And I'm going to tell you, forgiven means something else, but you can't deny the spirit. You won't be forgiven. And if you look at that literally, it's like, oh, well, I'm going to go to hell if I deny the spirit. No. When you have a spiritual experience like that this is your knowing. If you deny it and say, well, I'm crazy or I'm making all this up in my head, that's not who I really am. When your truth is speaking to you, you're not going to be forgiven. It will cause you suffering. It will just cause you suffering, flat out, when you deny who you are. And the only way you know that is through that experience. There's no science. There's no website. There's nothing that tells you this. You just know.
Mm-hmm.
Deny it and you will suffer.
No, that's true. You really will. It's something that I personally had went through, denying who I knew myself to be. And it's a painful process.
And that's all I got to say about that. Speaking of, that's all we got to say about that, actually. Now, speaking of asking all the right questions, our guest tomorrow night is the epitome of asking all the right questions. I really look up to this guy. He's got a fantastic background in broadcasting, awesome YouTube channel. And if you want to prep for the show tomorrow night, Jeffrey Mishlove is going to be here with us tomorrow night. I want to thank all of you for helping out. A big shout out to Amanda, also Pacho, Patrick, a.k.a. Pacho, Lady Ann, thank you for coming on as well. And I do want to say that, here. Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? This is fun.
It is.
Well, we have the calling line.
I love it.
Join in anytime. All right, so we'll be back tomorrow night, same time, same channel. Don't copy the show without written permission. Music was by Chronox, guitar by Bundy. Tomorrow night, Jeffrey Mishlove will be here, same time. Good night.
On this program do not necessarily reflect those of the Fringe FM, KTLK Digital Broadcasting, its sponsors, affiliates, or staff. Listener discretion is advised.